Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in JJK as Megumi? The Potential Man Part 3. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Don't make me laugh, brat. You might put on a brave front, but I know you fear for this brat and his miserable life. You are right to fear for him, because it seems that the brat is having some trouble swapping back, especially after I ate another one of my fingers from that joke of a curse. So I've decided to take this brat hostage, Sukuna announced with a sense of gleeful malice. Much to Megumi's annoyance, the King of Curses proceeded to pierce himself with his own hand and pull out his own heart, or rather his vessels. There, now the brat can't swap back and I'll keep his body for my own, Sukuna declared as he exploded with maniacal laughter, expecting the sorcerer in front of him to fall into despair. However, the king was brought out of his jubilation as he heard the black-haired sorcerer start laughing uproariously along with him. Oh, I'm sorry, don't mind me, your majesty. Continue your celebration, I just find it hysterical is all, Megumi explained, waving him off as he wiped away a tear that was building in his eye. Find what hysterical? Sukuna asked with squinted eyes. The fact that you think you could kill me with only 3 fingers and no heart. Now that had gotten him the reaction he wanted, as Sukuna had immediately raised his hand and aimed it towards him. Megumi saw this and jumped back to avoid the obvious use of his cursed technique, as Sukuna had fired off multiple dismantles towards Megumi. However, as he did, Megumi noted an odd sensation that fired off throughout his body. It was almost as if he could sense a disturbance in the air ahead of him, a vague sense that something dangerous and invisible was approaching him. What the hell was that? Are my senses messing with me? Or is it that my senses are truly reaching beyond that of a human? Am I getting close to being able to sense and locate Sukuna's dismantles with my bare senses without the need of a cursed technique thanks to my permutations? How exhilarating! My growth truly knows no bounds. Megumi laughed out as he felt his senses fire off once more, alerting him to incoming danger as he dodged dismantle after dismantle. Every now and then he would miss a dismantle that dug into his flesh and tried to cut him apart. However, he healed all his wounds with his borrowed reversed cursed technique. The King of Curses noted that dismantles at his current level of fingers would not be sufficient to turn the upstart sorcerer to mincemeat and decided to get in close to rip him to shreds himself with cleaves. Why are you running, sorcerer? Aren't you supposed to be strong? But I guess being strong in an era of weaklings means as much as this brat is smart, Sukuna called out as he closed the distance in order to kill the brat. He might only have 3 fingers currently, but he's still the King of Curses for a reason. I can't underestimate him at any point. Honestly, you would need at the very least a 3-finger head start in power in order to face him on equal terms, and even then, one screw-up would mean you lost a limb or even your head. So there's no need to risk any of my Shikigami like before. I can handle this one myself. Let's piss him off just a little bit more though. Let's get a bit more serious, shall we, Sukuna? Megumi declared with a grin, happy to be able to put this specific ability into testing once again. He activated another incarnation, his eyes shifting to a crimson red in the process. The combined effect of both the rings in his eyes along with its new crimson color had caused Megumi's and Sukuna's eyes to look uncannily similar. Incarnation, Rabbit Escape. Megumi stayed in place as Sukuna blurred towards him with supernatural speeds, ready to rend the one who disrespected him to mincemeat in seconds. But just as he reached closer, Megumi suddenly fell through the ground and into his very shadow, disappearing from view. Sukuna paused in his place and looked around with 4 keen eyes, looking for any sign of him to no avail. He growled in annoyance at this, grumbling under his breath, "I hate these Jujutsu sorcerers. Yo Sukuna! The king heard from behind him. He turned and fired off a dismantle without moving his arms at the sorcerer that foolishly revealed his location. However, to the king's surprise, although the dismantle had struck true and sliced its target in half, to his shock he saw it just be pulled back together as if he was never cut to begin with. So Sukuna sent even more dismantles at his opponent to check if this new abilities had a limit. Now that's just rude. Megumi complained with a childish grin even while he continued to be sliced apart and pulled back together by repeated dismantles. Slash after slash, cut after cut dug into his flesh, but for naught, as the only impact they left was cutting apart his body to reveal a sea of shadows being confined within. His plan had truly worked and he had perfected his cloning ability. And much like many of his other techniques, it was built upon a binding vow within its core. Essentially, he had taken the base concept of his clones having hollow bodies due to their limitations around the soul and expanded upon it. He had merged his ability to create clones built of shadows into his incarnation with binding vow to never use it outside of the incarnation. In exchange, his shadows will be able to fill the hollow void within his clones that were made from the lack of enough of his soul to go around, which allows them to be able to pull themselves back together after every injury with minimal effort, essentially making his clones functionally immortal unless you were to obliterate them completely with one attack or are able to strike at his soul directly, which would allow you to ignore their special durability. This ability would not have been perfected and held together with just that, so Megumi undertook yet another binding vow to do so. In exchange for the stabilization of his clones, Megumi will only be able to create 4 clones at a time when he could previously make 9, and they would all lose the senses of touch, smell and taste. Which also means that I won't feel anything when my clones are injured, so they can be ripped apart for all I care. God, I'm a genius sometimes. Eat your heart out, Plot Kuna. This is how you become a binding vow merchant. Megumi thought, laughing as he and 3 more of his clones revealed themselves from different corners of the clearing. I know, right? Megumi. So rude, honestly. Maybe the fraud needs a nap to calm down. That could be it. Megumi. Sukuna turned to the voices, seeming almost flabbergasted at what he was witnessing. All of the copies of Megumi held a similar amount of cursed energy, showing thanks to his cursed energy trait which helped him hide among his clones. Along with that, all the clones had shells made of his very soul, so at first glance, no matter which one you looked at, they would seem to be the original, even to one who can perceive the contours of the soul as Ryam and Sukuna could. I have to admit, you might be one of, if not the most infuriating Jujutsu sorcerer I have had the displeasure of facing even back in my time. Sukuna admitted with a sense of begrudging respect, as even though he wanted to kill him, he could not deny the feat of Jujutsu he was facing. To do this in such an effective way with a technique seemingly limited to only summoning Shikigami at first glance, fascinating. How much training was required for this? Or is it a base intrinsic ability for the technique? Sukuna thought. He found himself somewhat impressed at the showcase of unusual abilities from this young sorcerer. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, Sukuna. I've read up on you recently after Itadori went and ate your finger. And I found a rather interesting ability of yours. Watch this. One of the copies said with a shared devious grin as they all brought their hands up and placed them facing each other vertically while channeling his incarnations once more. Fuga. Pillars of flames were summoned in between the palms of every Megumi copy as shortly after they collectively started bringing their palms together, creating a pressurized orb of hellfire within their palms that was then compressed even further and further. You wouldn't dare. The king growled out in complete and utter rage at the mockery he was witnessing. Convergence, piercing cinders. They all shouted out collectively as streams of pressurized flames shot at Sukuna like lasers. The man jumped out of the way as he avoided all of the blasts that met together in the middle to create an inferno that threatened to burn down the entire detainment center. You damn black-haired brat, you call that a flame? Sukuna raged out as he landed a few feet away from the inferno with an enraged expression at the obvious disrespect thrown towards his cursed techniques, although that rage hid a sense of slight respect at the sorcerer's ingenuity to be able to make such an elaborate copy of his ability with his own. I'll show you what a real flame looks like. the King of Curses declared as he brought his hands together into the form of his domain expansion hand sign, while the Megumi clones all moved to activate their own simple domain, as they couldn't use their own domain to counter Sukuna's a malevolent shrine. A traditional Shinto shrine formed behind the monarch. However, its form was morphed and perverted from its formerly divine form. Its foundations were made of the skulls of oxes, and each side of the shrine was a huge cursed maw. The cursed aura leaking from the wood sent shivers down the spines of any living being in the area. Domain expansion. Malevolent Shrine Sukuna started chanting for the activation of his domain expansion, but stopped at the end when a pulse fired off throughout the core of his being that caused his strength to leave him, which made his words start to slur at the end. The Megumi clones just collectively smiled at this as they stopped moving and put their hands down from their positions for simple domain before, one by one, they all dissolved away into a puddle of darkness that flew from their location and slammed into the original Megumi, who was to the left of Sukuna. Shortly after the pulse, the shrine behind Sukuna shook for a moment before it shattered apart in an instant with a shower of broken bones. With it, the king stumbled forwards as he began to lose more and more control over his vessel, along with his tattoos starting to fade. Looks like the King of Curses needs to take another power nap. Maybe you should look over your malfunctioning shrine for a while before you take over again. Bye-bye, Gramps. This brat is actually dashed, the king mumbled with a sense of disbelief as all the tattoos that covered the body of his vessel faded away within seconds. Welcome back, Itadori. I apologize for not being able to keep you alive despite all my talk. I suppose me saving you and keeping you from being executed was merely just greed on my end. Megumi confessed as he looked the now heartless man in the eyes. Nah, you're wrong, Fushiguro. You are a good person, even though you are also a great sorcerer. These were the first words that came out of the pink-haired teen's mouth as he regained control over his body. You talk real big about how you're a bad person and alert, but my grandpa always said that action spoke louder than words, and ever since I met you, you've been nothing but kind to me and everyone else around you. I never really thought about it before, but back then when we first met, you could have just knocked me out and gone to take the finger alone. It would have been much more efficient and I would have never eaten that finger. But you didn't. You let me follow along to help my friends even if it wasn't the smartest thing to do. Deep inside, you're just a big softy that has been hurt by the world and now tries to hide his feelings by using that hard as facade. Yuji declared with a heartfelt grin even as blood started pooling in his mouth and dripped down his chin. If I had lived, I'd have made sure to drill that info into your head till you can't forget it. Anyways, I think this is it for me now. Take care of Kujisaki for me, will why? I'm sure she'll go really far, especially with your help. Itadori, Yuji said cheerfully. Before his body fell over, dead. Megumi Fushiguro stood there speechless for a moment as he took in the pink-haired man's dying words. His silence shortly then turned into a small chuckle, then an uproarious laughter from the bottom of his soul. Soon enough, Megumi was laughing so hard he was starting to tear up from all his laughter. His incarnations even faded away as he lost his focused hold upon them. Who the hell says something like that before he thinks he's gonna die? Freakin's hell, Itadori Yuji, you truly are the main character and the protagonist. No other man would be able to say things like that with a straight face. Megumi chuckled to himself as he wiped away the last of his tears. I swear upon my name as Megumi Fushiguro, I won't allow you to fall into the same pit of depression and despair you did in our first life, Itadori. He then summoned by his side his latest and most useful Shikigami, Tranquil Deer. The Shikigami immediately went to work as she lowered her head down so that her antler touched the body of Yuji Itadori before she started channeling her reversed cursed energy. Immediately as she did, all of the wounds left upon the vessel's body started mending together, and most importantly, his heart was rebuilt from the ground up till it was reborn brand new and better than before. Yo Fushiguro, looks like the fight is over. What happened? Why is Itadori on the ground with your Shikigami touching him? Kujisaki asked as she jogged over to him, having finally gotten done evacuating the area with the windows and saw that the fight had ended. Oh, Sukuna ripped out his heart before Itadori swapped back, essentially killing the both of them when he did. Megumi answered casually as golden sparks of electricity started building throughout his right leg. He what? Oh, don't worry, death is temporary with him. Watch this! Megumi shouted as he brought up his right leg that was covered in a shower of sparks and slammed it straight onto the left side of Yuji's chest. This caused an immediate reaction as the pink-haired former dead man shot up from his place on the ground and screamed out in pain. The electric charge within Megumi's leg had forced his heartbeat to start again, effectively reviving him from death. Wakey, wakey sleeping beauty. How was death? Megumi asked with a grin, his foot still on his chest. What the hell, I died right. Wait no, I was in Sukuna's innate inner domain for a while. The shitty geezer was talking about some binding vow he wanted to make with me in exchange for reviving me. Of course, I told him to go screw himself repeatedly with the bad end of a pocket knife since he seems to like cutting things so much. Itadori blurted out all his inner thoughts as he was getting over the high of death and revival. Good, looks like I revived him way before Sukuna managed to trick him into that binding vow. Suck my nuts block Kuna, no I in chain for you. Now I only need to watch out for the couple of times that Sukuna takes over every once in a while, although knowing my luck it'll probably be a weekly occurrence. Megumi thought, happy that he had stopped a major screw-up from happening in the first place. Dear God, my life has gotten so much weirder after meeting the two of you. At the very least the dead remained dead before I met you guys. What are we even gonna tell the higher-ups? Kujisaki lamented how screwed up her life had become after meeting her classmates. That's the neat part, we don't tell them shit. Megumi stated cheerfully as he placed a hand into his shadow and started looking for something. Tell them what now? Nobara asked with a tired expression as Yuji touched his chest like he was double-checking that it was still there. We tell Slem that Itadori died, that would get them off of his back and remove the death penalty order from him temporarily, giving him more freedom for a while. He explained. And how do you suppose we get them to believe that he died without a corpse? Kujisaki asked with a deadpan expression. That's what this body is for. We tell them that I burned the body away after our fight to ensure Sukuna's demise and all that was left was the heart that Sukuna himself ripped out of Itadori's chest. Shoko would be more than happy to work with us and forge a document if it meant screwing with the higher-ups. The two of them paused in shock as he then pulled out one of the bodies of the detainees that they found. Speaking of Sukuna, after this fight, I think I've grasped it. The true form of my domain, the next time I use it. I will unleash my true Shouhit and finally complete my domain expansion. You don't mean? She asked, feeling somewhat disgusted. Yep. Megumi confirmed as he unceremoniously pierced the chest of the corpse with his hand just Sukuna did to Yuji and ripped out the heart of the body before throwing the heart and the body back in to be used later on and for ease of storage. Hey guys, I dunno if it's just cause I came back from the dead. But I feel like we're much closer than before. What do you think about just calling each other by our first names? Sounds good, I always hated those formalities. We're Jujutsu sorcerers, what does it matter what our first names are? Sure whatever. After everything that happened today, Megumi is right. What does it matter what they are? I love you guys, for real. Me too man, me too. The next day, 8 a.m. Southern Shizuoka Prefecture. Yes, I did say that Sukuna took over his body, he took over so I had to kill him. I don't understand what you're not getting here. Megumi repeated exasperated into his phone. He was currently sitting in a black car that was speeding down the road to get to a specific residence near the south of Shizuoka Prefecture. The black-haired man had 3 files on his lap, each of which had information on minor jujitsu clans that had a potential to be either sympathetic to his cause or down to have a major upheaval in how the world of jujitsu is built and maintained. And he was currently doing research on each one to ascertain which one to visit first, all the while in a call with the higher-ups of Jujutsu HQ. They were currently grilling him for information on how the Faishu Detention Center incident had played out, as they were skeptical about the death of Yuji Itadori despite the report given from Shoko Eri. How many times do I have to say it? I burned the corpse to ashes to make sure Sukuna couldn't take it over again. What was I supposed to do? Take a picture of the body and send it to you old geezers through a fax machine before you believe me." He growled into the phone with clear annoyance. If one looked closely, you would notice that Megumi Fushiguro's normally viridian green irises were currently burning a crimson red that signified the activation of his rabbit escape incarnation. He was currently maintaining the form of a clone back at Tsumiki's room, which had the purpose of protecting her as well as studying her curse, trying to get a clear outline for her soul, which was merged, or rather, as how he recently ascertained, suppressed by Yorozu's dormant soul with the help of Kenjaku's seal whenever he had brain power and attention to spare. "Look, I told you what happened on my end. Believe me or piss off, I don't care which." Megumi closed the call immediately afterwards and went back to considering his next moves by going through his files once more. "Young master, you didn't have to come along. I could have delivered the package by myself. I am yours to command after all, so there's no need for you to come along and busy your already packed schedule." Rin commented as she turned the car with terrifying speed and grace down the street, barely missing a child that was walking a few steps into the street by a few centimeters. "Well, in the end, it is my responsibility. I have to make sure that the failures of both myself and my people are accounted for. If I, as the future leader of Jujutsu society, don't know the importance and weight of taking responsibility, then who will? We would just fall back into the same hole we're currently trying to get out of," he stated. He then read a file that held intensive information about the Kyofuchi clan, which had undergone a steady decline over the past few decades due to the lack of competent sorcerers born of it. And so he thinks that with a bit of support, and of course some manipulation, he could pull them to his side easily. "As you command, young master." She accepted his reasons with a small smile just as the car stopped as they had reached their destination, which was a small and humble house in the suburbs of Shizuoka. Megumi closed the file in his lap and exited the car in a single movement, eager to be done with this and move on to the next part of his today's checklist. Rin followed closely behind him, stopping briefly to open up the trunk of the car to grab a large rectangular object. The black-haired man walked ahead towards the front door of the house, adjusting his black tie as he did so, as he had chosen to wear an all-black suit with a white shirt for this part of the mission. He tidied up his hair for a moment before he rang the doorbell and waited for the door to be answered, which took about a minute. "Why, yes, can I help you?" asked a familiar woman. She had deep eye bags and faded tear streams going down her cheeks. "I apologize for bothering you, but I have come here for an important matter regarding your son Tadashi." Megumi announced with a stoic expression. "Hey? What is it? What happened to Tadashi?" the woman demanded immediately. All her tiredness seemed to have vanished immediately. "That is why I am here. I regret to inform you that Tadashi is dead," he informed with a sense of warmth in his voice. Megumi didn't flinch even as the woman slapped him with all her strength before she fell against him and cried her heart out once more. He didn't move an inch as tears soaked his vest. "It isn't any fault of her own. She's just a woman grieving for the loss of her son. Not like I even felt it." Even though he felt nothing for the death of Tadashi, he still held himself responsible for his death, as it should have been his responsibility to save him, and so he allowed it to slide. "But if it grants any solace, we did manage to recover his remains." "Why you did?" she asked as she backed off of his chest while muttering a soft sorry. "Yes, but I must warn you, it is not a pretty sight," Megumi confessed, adding an air of hesitation in his voice. He looked into the woman's eyes to look for an answer before he sighed and snapped his fingers before stepping aside. When he did so, Rin walked into the house with a large coffin-shaped box in her hands, which she was holding comfortably. She walked past the woman with the box and placed it in the middle of her living room. The woman rushed towards the coffin and opened it to look at what was left of her son. Shortly after opening it, she fell to her knees and started crying again with a mixture of happiness and sadness. "I know this doesn't make our failure any better, but I hope that this, along with this envelope, will help you finally heal and move on. Goodbye," Megumi said as he reached into his suit and retrieved a small envelope before placing it upon the coffin. The older woman looked up from her place on the ground and saw with widened eyes that both Megumi and Rin were bowing to her together. She reached towards the envelope and opened it before she gasped loudly at the check within it. "Excuse me, I couldn't possibly take this much when it wasn't your fault to dash." She cried out in surprise as she looked back up towards the two of them and paused as they had both disappeared from view completely. Megumi had told Rin to stop the car a few miles away from the house at an isolated bridge. The black-haired man exited the car with a small sigh as his assistant followed him out. He took off his vest and walked to the edge of the bridge. He moved his hand back with his vest on it, which was taken from him by Rin. She then handed him his signature hari with her head bowed down, although it had been modified to have the symbols and shadow figures of his shikigami emblazoned along its entire form. He put on the hari in a single motion and looked back to see her now on one knee with her head bowed even further, causing him to sigh with a feeling of helplessness. "Well, I did save her family from a lifetime of servitude under the Camo clan, and some would consider that a fate worse than death. I suppose it can't be helped. If she wishes to serve me with this much further, then it would be more harmful to push her away after everything." Megumi sighed as he ran a hand through his hair. "Rin, I'm going to fly home. I need you to reach out to the Kyofu clan, as they will be the next ones we bring into our side. Find out what they need and lure them in with what we can give them in return for their allegiance," he ordered while rolling his shoulders. "Also, have our people search for a cursed spirit with the ability to have a subspace within it which is compatible to become a shikigami, and make sure it is capable of shrinking. Cost is not a factor, so look even outside the country if necessary." "Can I trust you with all of this?" the special grade sorcerer asked as he jumped on top of the edge fence of the bridge. "As you command, so it shall be, young master," Rin simply said with a smile bathed in an air of reverence. She seemed oddly happy to be given complicated tasks by her chosen master. "Good, then get to work, Rin. I expect great things from you," Megumi declared as onyx-colored wings sprouted from his back before he flew off at awe-inspiring speeds that caused a sonic boom in his wake. Rin watched him as he flew away. The sonic boom he created during his lift-off had caused air to blow her hair around as the demure smile on her face grew into an excited grin. She jumped in her place for a moment in quiet celebration before she got back into the car and drove off eagerly. Megumi flew forwards at incredible speeds with sonic booms sounding out in his wake. Even the skies cleared when he passed through the heavens and the clouds. He crossed the distance between southern Shizuoka and Tokyo Jujutsu Tech at blinding speeds that surpassed anything that he could have imagined before. He had crossed a 120 kilometers of distance in exactly 4 minutes and 11 seconds. If I had to take a guess at my current flight speed, I'd have to say it's well past the speed of sound but lower than Naoya's top speed in his vengeful spirit form. Makes sense, dumb bastard has a pretty strong speed-based cursed technique. Shame he's such a huge dumbass. It doesn't matter how much potential it has, the only reason he was able to cast a domain expansion was pure hatred of women. It's almost impressive, really. Megumi arrived at the outer barrier of the school and crossed it without much further fuss. He hovered in the sky for a moment as he located the two of his classmates sitting on a flight of stairs of a shrine in the middle of the forest. Now locked onto his classmates' signatures, he turns midair and flies over to their location before landing in front of them. He turned to look towards Kujisaki and Itadori with a tired grin as his wings fluttered for a moment before melting away into shadows and leaving behind a few falling onyx-colored feathers. "Why are the two of you sulking out here in the sun? Shouldn't you two be training?" Megumi asked with a hint of amusement as he placed a hand on his hip. "It's too frickin' hot to do that, you monster!" Itadori shouted out incredulously while pointing at him. "Yeah, not all of us are genetic freaks who could go for 4 days without food or water all the while doing missions and training," Kujisaki called out, annoyed at his casual demeanor. To this Megumi chuckled as he had done that a week ago to test out the limits of his evolved body. Much to his delight, he found that as long as he gave his body enough time to regenerate his cursed energy and took breaks every once in a while, he could keep performing at high capacity for days on end with low resources. Is it smart to let Sukuna know I can summon more than 4 Shikigami at a time? No, probably not. Would it really matter much in the end? No, probably not either. He'd be able to kill them pretty easily if I summoned them by themselves anyways. Whatever, trying to hide so much because I'm scared of Sukuna is for pussies. I can handle him. Megumi considered for a moment before deciding to throw caution to the wind. He let out a small sigh before his shadows expanded outwards way larger than ever before as one by one, each one of his 8 tamed Shikigami were released from his shadows, allowing them to relax and stretch their limbs in peace. Baku, before you go off, could you spray water into the air every once in a while? Megumi asked the elephant as she exited his shadow. Baku huffed for a moment before she aimed her trunk at the skies. A short charge-up time later, she released a huge torrent of water into the open air. The water flew up 20 meters into the sky before it broke apart and dispersed into a wonderful drizzle of rain that cooled down the hot and dry area. The appearance of all the Shikigami, along with the drizzle of rain that cooled down the area, had completely revived the 2 classmates' fervor and spirit as they cheerfully got up from their slumped places on the stairs to enjoy the cool atmosphere. Sorry for not letting you guys out much lately. I've been busy and been getting sidetracked a lot, so I've never had the time. Megumi called out to his Shikigami as they all spread out to relax for a while. To his credit, they all didn't seem bothered by it and just happily moved on. Blizzard, however, was quite excited to be able to simply stand by his master and relax in his presence after so long they spent apart or unsummoned. He showed this by running up to the black-haired man and jumping on top of him. His sudden weight pushed Megumi to the ground where the wolf proceeded to lick his face, his tail turning into a helicopter as he did so. I missed you too, buddy. Megumi laughed out while trying to get the excited canine off of him, but struggled to do so due to how large he was and his own unwillingness to use force against him. Well, you guys look like you're having fun, said an amused yet very familiar voice from ahead of him. Before Megumi could respond, Blizzard shot up from his place on top of him and shot off towards the voice, to which the black-haired man huffed in amusement as Yuji came up to him and helped him up to his feet. Finally done with your mission in Hokkaido, Moki? Megumi looked towards where Blizzard ran off to and laid his eyes on his favorite sparring partner and most trusted ally, Moki. She was currently holding the giant wolf Blizzard with one hand in a baby carry while rubbing his belly with the other. She didn't seem to be exerting herself in the slightest as she did so despite the huge disparity of size. What's with the hair, and why do you look like you tried to check if you were volcano-proof? He asked, curious and a bit concerned as he recognized her current hairstyle as the same one she had after the Shibuya incident, and especially concerned as she looked like she had light burns all around her body. Moki suddenly looked ticked off and annoyed at remembering something that happened a day prior. Megumi then heard giggles from behind Moki as he felt 2 other familiar signatures come up behind her. It's funny you say that. Panda laughed out in between giggles and heavy breathing. Salmon roe. Inumaki agreed, holding his stomach in pain from laughing too hard. I cut my hair like this for my end. Some bastard volcano head curse forced me to repeatedly tank blasts of fire for civilians because the windows failed to secure and clear the village of any leftover civilians during the evacuation. The black-haired woman growled out in rage, veins on her temple bulging out as she did. Volcano head. Yuji mumbled, turning to Kuchisaki beside him confused as he tried to imagine a curse that matched the name. However, the brown-haired girl was uncharacteristically quiet. Her cheeks were dusted with a light pink. Wait, hold on. Nabara, do you like wug? Yuji started asking after a moment of thought, but was stopped by her elbowing him in the gut as hard as she could without saying a word, causing him to grunt and double over in pain. Shut up. She hushed him, her cheeks now burning even harder, which confirmed his suspicions. If it managed to hurt you at all, it must have been a special grade curse to manage even that. Did YA manage to kill it at least? Megumi questioned, recalling Jogo, who was a special grade disaster curse that matched her description, and it would be very convenient if she killed him early. His question caused Moki, who had dropped Blizzard onto the ground and was now just simply petting his head, to become even more pissed somehow, causing her to put more pressure onto the ground beneath her and create a crater from her pure strength alone. He was a special grade, yeah, he could talk pretty fluently and was crazy strong after all. Moki had him on the ropes for the entire fight and forced him to target the civilians as a distraction. he managed to get away in the end with the help of another curse. Panda explained, stuttering at the start as he calmed himself to stop laughing. I shattered both his arms with playful cloud and had him dead to rights twice, but I couldn't finish him off without a good blade, so the bastard managed to survive and run away right after I was gonna take his head thanks to that piece of shit plant dash. Moki ranted on and on, her rage at being forced to take repeated blasts of fire to protect innocent people and then having her kill stolen was overwhelming. So Jogo is still alive, huh? How annoying. She should be able to kill him as she is now. He might be stronger than normal because of me. Looks like she's also being held back since she doesn't have a special grade blade to use, since any others she uses break under her immense strength. Too bad she can't use Kage or the Greatsword to their fullest extent without cursed energy. We need to find her one soon. Megumi considered. But never mind all that. My burns are gonna heal by themselves in a few days according to Shoko. Why don't you introduce us to our new juniors? Moki asked after taking a moment to calm herself down. Oh right, my bad. You too, this is Moki. Moki, this is Nobara Kujisaki and Yuji Itadori. He simply said, not elaborating in the slightest. Hey. That's not descriptive at all, and you forgot the two of us. Panda called out in outrage from the side. Tuna Mayo. And so the students of the Tokyo Jujutsu Technical School trained for the next 2 months in preparation for the sister school Goodwill event, although they were pretty confident in winning the event without much issue. The following is a small compilation of the most entertaining moments of the next 2 months. Inside an open-wall dojo. Nobara sliced forwards with her naginata, trying to hit her opponent to no avail as her blade was gracefully avoided by her enemy, who proceeded to grab her weapon by its pole and twisted, causing it and subsequently her to be pulled into her opponent's grasp. Copying my moves is good and all, but if you don't got the speed and dexterity to pull them off, then you should stick to more basic stuff till you do. K cutie. Moki teased with a sly grin. Their faces were mere centimeters away from each other due to her grasp. Just as she had said would happen a few days ago, her burns had completely healed within a day thanks to her heavenly restriction, leaving her breathtakingly gorgeous visage to be shown freely once again, as not a single mark remained on her perfectly sculpted body. Okay. The brown-haired girl squeaked out, her face burning up a deep crimson in response to their compromising position. Go easy on the girl, will you, Moki? She's still not used to how blunt you are. You're gonna make her burn up into a puddle at this point. Megumi commented with a tired smile as he moved his body to the side slightly, a fist rushing past him at where he used to be right after he did so. Fist after fist was thrown at Megumi, each one was skillfully avoided with minimal movement. His hands were currently tied with rope behind his back to stop him from moving them. He had also loaded himself with food trucks within his inventory to push his body and cursed energy reinforcement to their utter limits. He was so heavy as he was now, that the very ground of the dojo beneath him cracked and crumbled with each step. He went to the left and then to the right. With each dodge he was forced to use as little movement and effort as physically possible to avoid the attacks. However, he had reached the end of his rope and knew that if he continued, it would be inevitable for him to be hit as his body was completely drained. All right, Tilda. Ruin my fun, why don't you? Moki acquiesced, releasing Nobara from her grasp and causing her to fall onto the ground in a nervous heap. Megumi weaved to the right to avoid another kick, and as he did so, he extended his foot slightly into his opponent's fighting form. This sudden movement had immediately achieved its purpose as his opponent tripped on his foot and fell down on his face with a loud crash. OUCH, how the hell can you still dodge me so easily even with so many weights on you? That doesn't even make any sense. Yuji complained as he dragged himself up into a sitting position while rubbing his nose. Megumi sighed out in relief as his shadows expanded outwards, from which shot out the food trucks outside the dojo and onto a nearby clearing to allow him to breathe in peace. He grunted while dropping into a cross-leg position on the ground ahead of Yuji to take a break before explaining to his pink-haired friend his mistakes. Megumi sat beneath the shade of the trees behind him, his black hari draped over his form, its wide sleeves pooling on the ground. Despite their spar, his white kimono underneath remained crisp, secured by a black obi at his waist. His white hakama spread out in soft folds around him, perfectly aligned. His sandals lay beside him, revealing his tabi-clad feet. You're fast, sure, but your moves are too predictable. With every attack you telegraph exactly what you're gonna do, with your facial expression, your footing, even how you tense each muscle before throwing a punch. He started, resting his head on his hand as he did so. These things are fine as you are now at your current level, as your opponents are too inexperienced to take advantage of them. Megumi explained as Rin came forwards from the sideline and removed his restraints for him before handing him a bottle of cool water. Thanks, but as you grow stronger and face more experienced opponents, even the smallest and most insignificant tells can be the difference between getting killed or dodging a fight-deciding attack and landing your own. After thanking Rin for her help, he swirled the bottle around while looking at the water sloshing around within. Remember, you're a Jujutsu sorcerer. We can't afford to make mistakes, he asserted with a tone of finality, then proceeded to drink half the bottle and handed what's left of it to Yuji. Another thing to consider is your cursed energy flow. However, we will worry about that when it is time to do so. For now, we'll focus on your base form and move up from there. Got it? Megumi asked as Yuji downed the rest of the bottle of water. Osu. Good, then let us continue. We have much work to do. Both Megumi and Yuji stood opposed to each other, ready to continue their training after a short break. Nobara and Moki weren't very far behind as they began training once more. Inumaki and Megumi were both sitting down on a fallen log, watching as Moki was being attacked on all sides by 3 different combatants, Panda, Yuji, and Nobara. They were all attacking with great fervor, using all of their strength. Panda was even in his gorilla form while Nobara was using her Naginata and combining it with nail attacks. Yuji was trying his hardest to land a single blow. However, he was completely outclassed in both speed and dexterity as Moki simply avoided his attacks without even turning to face him. She was dodging each and every one of their attacks with terrifying grace and precision, all the while she was blindfolded and even had headphones on that were playing music at absurdly loud levels. After every few attacks from them, she would land her own devastating attacks that caused the one unlucky enough to be hit to crumble over in pain. So that's why you need to be more creative with your cursed technique, Inumaki. Commanding someone to blow away, or be crushed is useful and all, but you're limited by your own body and cursed energy output. Megumi explained to his friend. Blizzard was sleeping next to him with his head on his lap which he was petting. Behind the two of them, his shadows were creating merged beast after merged beast in an effort to maximize his efficiency with how many Shikigami he can merge together, how fast the mergers are built and how much cursed energy is used up within said mergers. Salmon, salmon, Toge said while nodding in confirmation. The both of them watched as Moki proceeded to clothesline both Nobara and Yuji at the same time with a single move before throwing a roundhouse behind her. The kick landed directly into Panda's face and threw him backwards through a couple of trees. As you can see, someone with pure power would be able to crush you even under the effect of your technique, but if you were to use a more creative move in order to throw your opponent off their game, that could prove to be more effective than pointlessly abusing your throat against someone way stronger than you. Ah, salmon. Mustard leaf. 3 weeks later. Yo Otomo-san, could I please get another rice bowl? Yuji called out. Within his hands was an empty bowl. Rin didn't move from her place besides Megumi, who was currently eating some cold soba. Besides him were 26 empty bowls stacked on top of each other like a tower. He finished his bite of food before chuckling slightly. Rin, just give him what he wants. He ordered softly, his unusually crimson eyes glistening in the dimly lit room. The maroon-haired woman moved from her place immediately, handing the pink-haired teen a large bowl of rice, who then proceeded to take some ginger chicken meatballs from the pot in front of him and placed it on top of the rice bowl and ate it wholeheartedly. God, you're such a weirdo. Who chooses just a rice bowl with only ginger chicken meatballs on top for lunch? Nobara commented, even though in her hands was a rice bowl with the exact same toppings. Nobara, you've got the same thing he's got. Moki pointed out, in her hands was a large cheeseburger. If one looked beside her, they they would notice that it was her sixth one according to the number of crumpled wrappers she had. But that's completely different. Look, watch this. Yuji, what's your favorite food? Nobara asked, trying to prove a point. A rice bowl. With food on top. That's so unspecific. The brown-haired girl shouted out in outrage. Yo, what's up? You guys miss me? A familiarly annoying voice called out to them from behind before they could continue their banter, which caused Moki to grab the nearest knife and throw it towards the source at full force. Well, that's not very nice. I expected at least one of you to start crying and celebrating at my return. Oh, it's you. Where's your blindfold, you idiot? You look more stupid than usual without it, Moki commented after noticing who it was. Yo, what's up, Gojo-sensei? Yuji called out with a giant grin after finishing his own bowl of food. Indeed, it is I. Your super handsome and kind teacher, Satoru Gojo. The white-haired man declared with a dramatic pose, and as Moki had pointed out, he wasn't wearing his blindfold anymore and instead was wearing a pair of rounded sunglasses. It's been a while, Satoru. I heard the higher-ups had another mission for you in China. Didn't that one warlord you'd killed come back somehow? Megumi asked as he finished another bowl of soba before handing the empty bowl to Rin, who placed it on top of the tower of bowls. The number of empty bowls had reached 30. Ah, young master, it's actually his son this time. It seems he has followed in his father's footsteps and contracted his own special grade curse. Rin interjected as she poured for him some green tea. Ignoring the fact that you somehow know about classified information, I told them to go screw themselves and to send someone from the Zenin or Kamo clans this time. I have better things to do than go deal with their problems every time they screw up and let some idiot get too much power. Satoru announced. The white-haired man then disappeared from his place and reappeared sitting down by Megumi. He stole a bowl of ramen from Megumi's plate immediately and started eating. The black-haired man didn't react in the slightest as Rin quietly just handed him a new bowl without the need for him to speak up. Like what? Moki questioned with a deadpan expression before she started drinking some soda. Why, guiding and teaching my beloved students, of course. Speaking of which, where's Inumaki and Panda? I assumed they would be here. Satoru asked. Some teacher you are? I heard that, Nobara. I know. Principal Yaga called and asked them to come to him. Maybe some important mission came up. Yuji offered, trying to stop the argument from even starting. Megumi quietly looked up at Rin, who bowed before opening up her phone and typing for a moment. A short 30 seconds later, her phone rang again. They were called in for an emergency mission to escort an elder from the minor Seguruch clan to the Rikadah clan and provide protection in case of any attacks from vagrant curse users, since the elder has angered many people throughout his life. She reported concisely. Okay, again, ignoring how freaky it is that you can get that confidential info within such little time, I'm here to begin your training in earnest. We're going to crush those Kyoto school losers just like back in my day. Satoru. You do realize that me or Moki alone would be enough to do that, right? Megumi asked, amused at the insinuation that they would even have trouble with the Goodwill event. Yes, I do. But this is a training arc for a reason, so we must follow the plot. I'll start with training you, you've surely noticed it, right? Gojo questioned theatrically. In the background, Yuji was a bit confused at his choice of words, muttering training arc. Noticed what? You've hit a plateau, haven't you? Your efficiency in your technique is at about the maximum it can ever reach, as you are now without access to true reverse cursed technique. It's the same thing with you too, Moki. The only way the two of you will be able to grow stronger as you are now is by fighting and struggling against someone much, much stronger than yourself. Oh God, you can't mean. Yep, the two of you will be fighting me every day till the start of the Goodwill event. He declared with a giant grin, causing the two of them to groan in annoyance. Kill me already. You and me both, sister? A week later, 8 a.m. How many hits is that now? Yuji asked while eating from a bucket of popcorn as he watched from the outside of their specialized viewing curtain, the same one they used when Megumi and Satoru first fought, just as they had been watching for the past week. Megumi had figured out a way to activate it whenever needed for spars, albeit at a set location due to the talismans required being implanted into the ground. It was also way more fragile than one maintained by an actual sorcerer, but it worked well enough for their purposes. 12. That's a new record actually. They usually get stuck at around 10, but that last combo move worked pretty well. Well, better than usual I suppose. Nobara replied. She grabbed a slice of pizza from the table beside her. Megumi threw a punch that was enhanced with domain amplification towards Gojo, who deflected it with one hand before landing a devastating blue-infused gut punch, causing him to almost crumple over in pain, but he grit his teeth and grabbed his opponent's arm to stop him from backing away. Moki came in from behind at full speed. Within her hand was the inverted spear of heaven, which was aimed for the white-haired man's back. Gojo realized their plan and immediately went to dismantle it from top to bottom as his right hand started charging a reversal red. The strongest sorcerer jumped over Megumi even while the black-haired man refused to let go of his hand. This caused his hands to be held above himself in an awkward position, which Gojo took advantage of to kick at his knees and drop him flat on his ass. Cursed technique reversal, red. The Crimson Singularity shot at Moki with incredible speed just as she was mere centimeters from reaching her mark and was forced to block it while being sent flying away. Megumi tried to recover and land a hit in the opening, but was stopped by the white-haired man brutally stomping on his head, causing him to release his arm. The force of the attack indented his head into the ground even further. Satoru then proceeded to point his hand towards Megumi and grab him with his spatial control before throwing him away in the direction of Moki. Man, the two of you are starting to get the hang of it, even if it is getting slightly boring for me. I guess it's still a decent workout though. I haven't needed to actually try in a fight for real long while. Anyways Nobara, what's the timer at now? Satoru asked with a grin. Despite winning the exchange, he was working himself into a sweat. He even had cuts and marks on his clothing that showed hits or injuries that were healed away by reverse cursed technique. Oh, It's been 5 minutes and 48 seconds as of this moment. They lasted 20 seconds more than yesterday. She responded in earnest, secretly glad she was not the one being subjected to such harsh training. Megumi and Moki lay on the ground side by side in complete and utter exhaustion, just as they had for the past 2 weeks. Satoru had not been taking it easy on them and took every opportunity to beat their ass black and blue for every mistake and overreach. I'm doing the thing. An announcement. You're doing the thing? A question. I'm doing the thing. A confirmation. Megumi rose up from his place with a deadpan expression of annoyance and tiredness. His eyes gained a set of rings around his irises as shortly after, his whole body started steaming. He looked at Satoru's smug expression as all the bruises around his body healed up under the effect of his borrowed reversed cursed technique from his tranquil deer incarnation. He had activated it without the need for a hand sign or chant due to his extensive training and experience with the ability. You know you're gonna lose, right? And he's gonna clown on you even harder after he's done wiping the floor with you, again. This is a bad idea. She pointed out. Maybe so, but my soul won't sit still while he has that smug grin on his face. Well, as long as you know. Moki said dismissively before closing her eyes and trying to get a minute of rest before getting back into the fray. Megumi got up and started marching towards the white-haired man, knowing that the only end result of his following move was a long restful sleep. Satoru watched him approach and chuckled slightly before he disappeared from his place for a second, reappearing right after with Nobara and Yuji by his side. The two of you hold on to me. This is gonna be a good lesson for you too. Okay. I dunno what's gonna happen, but it's probably gonna be cool. Domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden. I don't care if I'm pulling a Toji right now, I can't let this shit slide. Let's see how far away his refinement is from my own after fully realizing my domain against Sukuna. Megumi thought as he activated his domain and anticipated the counter-domain, aiming to mitigate any potential damage by firing up his borrowed reversed cursed technique to its utter maximum and allowing the positive energy to be built up in his body. Domain expansion, Infinite Void. The two opposing domains engulfed the four sorcerers completely as the abyss that was usually contained within Megumi's shadow burst out with a bottomless hunger that refused to be denied. Satoru Gojo's 6 eyes shined brightly as from them burst forwards a veritable tidal wave made of the very fabric of space. The two opposing domains clashed as shortly after the domain barriers were formed a spinal column formed behind Megumi which served as the anchor of his innate domain. Branches made of ribs formed and spiraled out of the central rib as they spread throughout the reaches of the domain. The boundless wonder of infinity shot forwards in a blinding streak of reality which clashed against the black hole of Megumi's domain for a moment before it began to push forwards. Within the span of 10 seconds, Satoru Gojo's infinite void had overwhelmed Fushiguro Megumi's Uchimura Shadow Garden. The black-haired man grit his teeth as he felt his domain crumble and readied himself for the sure hit of Satoru's domain. At first it was nothing and then it was everything all at once, as if he had access to infinite knowledge of the multiverse, yet it was all incomplete and he could never grasp the truth. I can't see anything. Where am I? Why can't I move? Wait, I was in Satoru's domain, right? Why am I thinking about filing taxes? Why the hell am I erect? Megumi shouted out within the now cramped stretches of his mind as even more cursed knowledge began creeping its way into his mind uninvited. Wait, are these fan fictions of Satoru and Geto? Oh god, why are they naked? Satoru, why are you laying on your stomach? Why is he pulling out a curse? Unknowing of Megumi's plight and the scarring knowledge being forced upon the poor man, Satoru began leisurely teaching his students about the ins and outs of domain expansions. As you guys probably know by now thanks to Megumi over there, this is a domain expansion. It can be considered a subspace created through the combined powers of an innate domain similar to the one the finger bearer you guys faced created, complex barrier techniques and finally infusing a cursed technique within it. Gojo explained, making sure that the two of his students were holding onto him at all times. Yeah, Megumi used this against the finger bearer. Sukuna tried to use it too before I swapped back. It looks really useful, but I bet it's really draining and intensive to use, right? Yuji deduced while casually poking Megumi's blank face, not knowing of the countless horrors behind his frozen facade. Yep, but they can still be very useful as any technique engraved within a domain will always hit. Yeah, that's cool and all, but this is getting freaky. I kinda feel bad for Megumi too. This doesn't seem to be very comfortable for him. Nobara commented while looking at Megumi's expression of surprised horror, feeling not an insignificant amount of pity for the man. Oh, yeah, you're right. Gojo muttered as his domain then faded away, leaving behind Megumi who was still stuck in the same pose, unable to move. How long will he stay like that? Yuji asked, starting to feel a bit of worry for the man. A week? Maybe 2. You're a bad teacher. And a bad person. Hey, he quite literally asked for it. My point still stands. Wanna draw wieners on his face? I got the marker. I call his forehead. An hour later. What the hell were you thinking? Shoko demanded in outrage. Beside her lay Megumi with his eyes still open yet in perfect condition due to his new incarnation granting him enhanced eyesight and protection. He was laying on a bed with the same expression of horrified surprise and resignation. But he's the one that used his domain on me first. I only used my own to counter his. Besides, it was a good lesson for the other two. Satoru reasoned. He was sitting on the ground as he was being berated for his idiotic choice to use his admittedly overkill domain sure hit against his student. Don't you dare try to deflect this by mentioning your students, you dumb brat. What about Fushiguro-kun and her? Do you have any idea what I now have to deal with thanks to this mess? What the hell do I tell the higher-ups when they ask why a special grade that is under my watch has suddenly gone AWOL with no explanation? Principal Yaga chastised the white-haired in a fit of annoyance. Not to mention the political hellfire the Zenin clan will light under my ass when they hear that their teacher has put him out off commission during a teaching accident. You're the clan leader of the Gojo to boot. This is a nightmare. Do you even know the implications of this to those damn elders? He went on to dig into Satoru, rambling on and on. I know how to fix your problems. Moki interjected, causing everyone in the room to swerve to look at her in surprise as they didn't sense her getting inside the room due to her heavenly restriction. She was standing behind everyone in the corner of the room with her back leaning against the wall. Next to her was a rather large window. Oh, Moki, didn't see YA there. Go on, tell us your plan before Yaga-sensei over here blows a gasket and starts rearranging the geography of Satoru's face, amusing as that would be. Shoko said, gesturing to the titular man with a sly smirk as she watched him grimace slightly. Yeah, no one usually does. But anyways, Megumi-en, I thought of a fix for an eventuality like this in case he was indisposed or otherwise out of the picture for a bit. Moki revealed with a similar smirk. Reaching over to her side, she then proceeded to slide open the window before snapping her fingers as seemingly nothing. A cane, Kumri, she ordered. Immediately as she gave her order, a figure formed and coalesced from the shadow of a nearby tree branch. The figure was perched upon the edge of the window, ready at attention after being summoned. They were dressed in an all-black shinobi attire without any markings upon them which covered their entire body from head to toe. Yes, Lady Moki? What are your orders? The voice of the figure was that of a mature woman, approximately in her early 20s. Oh, it's that spy that hangs around Megumi that he told me to not worry about a while back. Satoru recalled when Megumi told him about her back when they were training in preparation for the parade. The what? Yaga shouted in outrage at the information that was held from him. Has she been following and watching him all this time? What about the rest of us? Shoko questioned. First of all, lose that lady apart, will you? Makes me feel like an old hag or one of those posh whores from a clan that think they matter cause they shit out a son with an okay technique and are happy being glorified baby ovens. Just Moki is fine. The black-haired woman ordered, feeling herself almost gag from the image of her being in that position. Second of all, this is a Kane Zenin. She is a Zenin spy placed on Megumi turned double agent. She's helping us give the Zenin clan misinformation about things regarding a few different things. Which includes when Megumi or I are indisposed, kinda like he is now. Moki explained. Goddamn. I don't like that this has been hidden from me for so long, but at least the two of you are more sensible than this dumb brat and thought ahead. The principal conceded, but not before he threw another dig at the white-haired man sitting in front of him. Good idea from you too. Wonder how you managed to turn her? Although I imagine it wouldn't be too hard, considering the Zenin clan and all. Also get in here, Kane. I doubt it's comfortable or good for your back to stay in that position for too long. Shoko commented, knowing full well of the acts of the titular clan. What is her technique, by the way? I could barely sense her at all before she appeared again. It was more like a sense of deja vu or like a gut feeling though. Satoru muttered, trying to deflect attention from him and also answer a curiosity of his. The double agent entered the room after a bit of hesitation. She stood by Moki's side and looked around the room. She paused after a moment and shivered as she desperately held in a laugh when she spotted Megumi's frozen form. Atop Megumi's forehead was 3 crudely drawn wieners, each one more and more detailed than the last, with the biggest one having the initials NYS written in the middle of it. It seems they were drawn with a permanent marker if the wet and stained tissues next to him were any indication. You cool with explaining it, Kane? Moki asked, not wanting to spill info she would rather keep quiet. Actually, lad, I mean Moki-san, I am forbidden to release any information regarding mine or any other Zenin clan asset, cursed technique or otherwise. Kane revealed, trying to hint them forwards. Oh? Under a binding vow, I presume. Shoko deduced as she caught on to her words' hidden meaning. Yes, I am only to speak of Zenin clan assets to a Zenin clan member, otherwise my soul will be ruptured. The double agent guided with a demure smile, bowing slightly with one hand on her chest. Following her words, every other person in the room quietly turned and looked at Moki with expectant grins. The titular woman progressively got more and more annoyed at this before her annoyance turned into simmering resentment, which then became resignation. Fine. Whatever. Come Ria Kane. The shinobi came forwards and whispered into Moki's ears for a moment, before stepping back and awaiting her next orders. Her cursed technique is called Shadow Cloak. She can basically hide herself completely in a sort of crack or fissure in space while being covered by a shadow, cursed energy and all. Moki explained begrudgingly. Hey, interesting. Must be why I couldn't sense her properly, but Megumi could without issue. Her cursed technique must be a weaker offshoot of his own, which could give him a connection to her technique due to their compatibility. Gojo analyzed, satisfied with finally knowing the answer. Well, anyways. Gumi should be up in a day or two. Thankfully it looks like he thought ahead and knew that he was gonna lose, so he used his deer's reversed cursed technique to charge up his body with positive energy prior to the impact of the idiot's infinite void. Shoko explained as she placed a hand on Megumi's forehead to sense his temperature before moving it down to close his eyes. I said I was sorry, okay. But hey, never thought of pre-charging your body with positive energy to prepare for damage when you can't use reversed cursed technique. Smart. Satoru mumbled, slipping the idea into the back of his mind to experiment with later. Doing so negated a decent amount of the brain damage you inflicted on him. But with me healing him consistently, along with unique biology thanks to his permutations and the mitigated damage from his own RCT, he should be up and running in about a day or two instead of the week or two it would have usually been. The doctor stated as her hand was burning with reversed cursed technique while she passively healed Megumi's brain damage. You know what to do then, don't worry, Kane? Go tell the Zenin bastards that he's out of the country on an emergency mission over in America or something. Anything that'll keep his bedtime nap hidden, as it were. Moki ordered dismissively, not caring much for the politics but knew that Megumi would. Very well, I will be sure to misdirect the clan for Megumi-sama. Farewell. Akane announced before she jumped backwards out of the room and through the window. She fell under a large tree's shadow before disappearing into the forest. Well, goddamn. At least that's taken care of for now. As for you, Satoru, you better not be feeling any relief. Because until he wakes up, you are still on my shit list. Who knows what kind of unspeakable horrors he's undergoing from this brain damage. A day and a half later. Megumi was currently sitting in the middle of his innate domain. Beneath him was a vertebrae of the spinal column that made up the core and base of his domain of absolute darkness. He held in his hands a bucket of popcorn with a soda on the side. In front of him was a TV which was playing horrendous renditions and takes on his world and has been for 24 hours. At some point he had managed to recover his mind and soul enough to pull his consciousness into his inner domain as a sort of refuge to help him recover. It took quite a bit of effort, but he had somehow managed it and was now resting inside his innate domain while waiting for his physical mind to heal enough for him to take back control of his body. Coming here had also allowed him to block out all of the remaining information that was beamed into his brain, although he had eventually chosen to sift through it to pass the time. I know I started watching this again from pure boredom, but honestly, this shit is pure trash. How the hell would a harem between Yuji and the rest of the women in our world even work? I couldn't even imagine Nobara and Yuki being into Yuji, much less being willing to share him with each other. Megumi sighed out as he ate his somewhat bland popcorn. Well, I guess I'm not that good at creating food from nothing in here. Surprised I was even able to pull this much off. Doesn't really make sense if I'm being honest. Whatever. I think my brain has healed up enough by now, so I should be waking up soon enough. He commented as he threw away the popcorn he made and fell backwards to lay down straight upon the vertebra of his domain. When he looked up towards the skies of his domain, he spotted a branch of the anchor of his domain. The spinal column that served as the core of his domain sprouted hundreds, even thousands of different branches made by an amalgamation of bones and void. And at the end of each one was a fruit, another manifestation of technique, another example of his almost infinite potential for growth. Another merger between monster and shadow, another being under his will, another entity born of curse and void. The one he currently looked upon seemed to be a merger between the great serpent, funeral tiger, and rabbit escape. And despite the unconventional mix of Shikigami, something in his soul told him it would be powerful enough to match and even overwhelm a first-grade sorcerer. He laid there for a few minutes as he tuned out the remnants of the stream of information that was forced upon him by Satoru's infinite void. He started considering his plans for the future and what he was going to do when he finally woke up. I guess it wouldn't be fair for me to blame Satoru for this, considering that I used my domain knowing this would happen. Still kinda pissed though, he's beaten me 879-0. He groaned, remembering the almost countless humiliating losses he had suffered. You'd think I could be getting close to winning, but I still can't catch up to the smug bastard. Domain amplification or not, even with the inverted spear of heaven, he's still beyond me. Megumi lamented. He covered his face with both his hands while groaning in annoyance, before he willing the vertebrae he was laying on to sink into his abyss and take him along with it. What the hell am I missing? Is training for so long and so vigorously simply not enough? Is Mahoraga truly the only way I can beat him? Have I really surpassed my past self if I can't match the truly strong without needing to rely on him? He questioned as he sunk deeper into the bottomless well that was his innate domain. No matter how much I train and work to become stronger, the gap between myself and his back just seems to become wider. Is this really all that I amount to? Megumi Fushiguro sank deeper and deeper until all he could see was shadows while contemplating his path in life and why he had chosen to become strong in the first place. In his past, Satoru once spoke of absolute strength and the loneliness it brought. That despite being surrounded with people that you love and care about, that still didn't clog the empty hole he could feel in his soul. The sullen words he read that old summer day still reverberated in his mind a decade later. You can make a flower bloom, you can admire it, but you can't tell the flower, I want you to understand me. They shook him to his core even now, because even after all his hard work for the past decade of non-stop training in Jujutsu, nothing scared him more than the chance that he would feel empty by the end of it. Despite all the blood, sweat, and tears he had shed throughout the years. Would it even matter to him at the end? Would he feel hollow? Lonely? What is it all for? Is becoming the strongest truly what will fulfill him in the end? These questions and dilemmas stayed in his mind, as he stayed there within the very depths of his domain for what seemed like days with nothing to occupy him but his own thoughts. Eventually he could feel a pull on his soul and a blinding light appeared at the very top of his domain. That pull got stronger and stronger as he was pulled out of the endless sea of his shadow upside down. He even started getting feeling back in his physical body again, which told him that he was finally waking up. Looks like it's finally over, back to the old grindstone I suppose. I wonder how the proceedings with the Amigo clan went. I need to debrief with Rin when I can. Hey, the hell's that? Megumi's thought process stopped as he laid his eyes on something he couldn't have expected. Deep beneath him, inside the very end of his paradoxically bottomless abyss, he saw himself. His past self, if his appearance was any indication, his body was much thinner and shorter from what he could see, which led him to believe it was his previous form. The other Megumi was sitting down at the bottom of their domain cross-legged, as if he was waiting for something or someone to arrive and sit in front of him. The simulacrum slowly looked up at his fading form for a moment before shaking his head and looking back down, almost as if saying it wasn't time yet. What the hell? Megumi didn't have time to consider or comprehend what he saw before he was pulled backwards even faster as within a second he flew out of the sea of shadows, past the spinal column that held his innate domain together and into the blinding light which swallowed him whole. Megumi shot up from the bed in a fit of alarm and surprise. He immediately looked around only to find himself alone laying in Shoko's office. He sighed out slightly as he calmed himself and thought back to what he saw inside the inner reaches of his innate domain. What the hell? Was that me? Whatever. It's probably just the last remnants of brain damage that hadn't cleared up yet. It doesn't matter, I got shit to do and I've already wasted enough time. He muttered while rubbing his eyes to remove any gunk from them. He heard the sound of the office door opening as he did so. Hey you're finally awake. Megumi didn't react much to the voice as he felt its owner approaching the room. As soon as he woke up, he simply continued wiping away the dirt on his face before getting off the bed. He then absent-mindedly took a cup of what he assumed was water which was on the desk to quench his thirst. Your brain healed most of the effects of the infinite void surprisingly quickly, almost like it adapted to it. Shoko explained as soon as she entered the room, hanging her coat on a hanger as she did so. Hey Shoko, how long was I out? He asked before downing the entire cup, wincing slightly as he did, realizing that it was actually beer. Shit Shoko, why do you have beer just casually in a cup in the middle of the afternoon? And, well, what can I say? I love me some Heineken. And besides, why are you just drinking a cup of liquid on another person's desk without asking first? The brown-haired woman then shot back with a small smirk. I guess that's fair. But it makes me wonder, aren't you scared for your health at all? All this abuse can't be good for your organs. Megumi questioned as he stood up and started stretching his limbs. However, he felt his vision seemed slightly off, as if he was seeing double, so he went to rub his eyes again to make sure nothing was in them. Nothing some good ol' RCT won't fix. Anyways, you were out for 1 day and about 16-ish hours. Didn't miss much though, so you should be fine. The scans I did didn't show any signs of brain damage, but let me check your eyes to make sure nothing's wrong. Shoko chuckled out as she walked towards him and went to check his eyes to make sure nothing was off. That's a new one. You wouldn't happen to be using your rabbit incarnation right now, would you? She asked, a hint of concern being evident in her voice. No. Why? To this, Shoko simply turned him to face a nearby mirror and showed him what she saw. When he turned around, Megumi then understood why his vision seemed off at first glance. Hey, you're right. That is new. Looking into the mirror, Megumi saw his eyes in their new form. Instead of their usual brilliant viridian green, his eyes had turned a deep blinding crimson even without him using his rabbit incarnation. I guess that explains why everything looks weird. This is gonna be a pain to get used to. Wait, if using the rabbit incarnation gave me the ability to see my own soul clearly, then this mutation must be. He mumbled under his breath as he looked even closer at his new eyes. Megumi's hypothesis was correct. Due to his now evolved eyes, Fushiguro Megumi is now capable of perceiving the contours of the soul. However, as his vision is now, he is unable to focus his sight and observe the soul clearly. Receiving a second sight was no small change to his senses after all, and it will take some training to get it all into odd. I didn't even need to hit a black flash for this mutation. I just got it naturally from using Rabbit Escape frequently, must be because I was basically using it whenever I was freely moving around. Although, could it also mean that my body is getting better at melding with and absorbing the essence of my Shikigami? Oh? If you mean what I think you mean, then that's pretty huge. You should go meet Moki when you can and train with her. She had similar problems at some point, but looks like she was able to get a handle on it after some time. She would be able to help you more than I could. Shoko said after determining that there wasn't anything wrong with the rest of him despite his newly enhanced vision. Cool then, before I go. You know where Satoru is? 'Cause this shit has his name all over it, the other two dumbass too, and I'm not talking metaphorically here. Megumi growled out as he looked up at his forehead and finally noticed the darts left upon his face along with the initials emblazoned on it. Oh? Tilda. Yeah, that. Satoru and Itadori aren't in Tokyo anymore. The first idiot screwed off to deal with something back in Kyoto with his clan or something, and the second one is with Nanami-kun investigating a potential special grade threat. Kujisaki is over in Tokyo. I think she's training with Moki if I'm not mistaken. Shoko revealed with a smirk as she sat down on her chair and leaned back. Thanks Shoko, see ya later. He simply said as he was swallowed by his shadow and replaced by a perfect clone that lacked the dart on his forehead. The clone walked out of the office and made his way towards the other end of the building, before entering a quiet room. Inside the room was Tsumiki laying on the bed as usual. Megumi walked towards her and focused his eyes closely. At first the contrasting and contradicting lines that signified the soul and the physical reality before him were too blurry to comprehend, but slowly and steadily they started to coalesce together into a clear image. He could see the visage of both his sister and her curse's souls, and just as he had expected, although they were tied together by a link he couldn't hope to break as he was now. He knew that it was now within his grasp. It won't be too long now. Megumi grinned with all his heart and soul, for after so long he had achieved some real progress. Soon enough, he will shatter the bonds that held his beloved sister's eternal soul hostage. A few hours later, Tokyo Jujutsu Tech Training Dojo. Why am I being used as the target holder here? Nobara cried out. Her face had a small cut run down her cheek that was made from a blade. In her hand she held a terrified 4th grade curse, although fortunately for her, it seemed the curse was too scared to move. Well, you can't argue with his logic, can you, Nobara? You drew a schlong on his forehead while he was unconscious, so now he makes you hold curses for his target practice to hone his new vision. Seems fair, no? Moki chuckled out, finding the image in front of her quite amusing. As Nobara was forced to hold a curse still for Megumi to slash at, in front of the light orange-haired girl was Megumi. In his hands was Koge, which was reforged once more under his will into a larger form which mimicked the soul-splitting katana. He was currently wearing an all-black yukata, with white highlights and pure white obi belt. Megumi had changed into this as it was the only set of clothing he had in his inventory, since he kept it there in case he ever went over to a formal clan meeting, which he planned to go to after this training session is over. No, it isn't fair at all. Why am I the only one being punished here? Gojo-sensei and Yuji drew on his face too. Kujisaki reasoned and tried to sell out her compatriots in hopes of a small sentence. Both idiots are out of my grasp for the moment, so you'll have to do for now. But don't worry, you can have a small break, as long as you keep that curse in your hold and don't let go. Megumi requested, causing Kujisaki and the curse in her grasp to sigh in relief at the same time while Moki chuckled slightly from the side. I'm speeding shit up if I want to have any chance of beating that dumbass. I need to squeeze every bit of power from my technique as fast as possible, he stated, before turning away and sticking his blade onto the ground before bringing his hands together into the shape of a tiger head's shadow puppet. He's already so strong, but he's not even in the least bit happy with it. How much more does he need to be satisfied? Nobara mumbled under her breath as she fell to the ground and sat, squeezing the curse in her grasp as a sort of stress ball as she did much to the curse's displeasure. Well, I guess that's the difference between us and people like him, isn't it? You and I might be happy with our lot in life as long as we reach a certain level, but him? He's different. For my entire life I've never seen someone train harder or as long or even as consistently as he does. Moki explained as they watched his shadows explode outwards to summon a new Shikigami. He lives for his growth, and nothing pisses him off more when there's a mountain he has yet to climb. Even if that mountain happens to be the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, arguably even the strongest in all of history as well. It's the biggest thing I admire about him, the bottomless ambition. Divine treasures, hear my call and awaken under my will. Megumi chanted, as the summoning of the second-to-last Shikigami demanded a grander ceremony than the rest. Hear my call and sound the ascension of the new lord. His shadows coalesced together ahead of him as one could hear the deafening sound of an elephant's trumpet. Witness my call and awaken the divine general's guard, funeral tiger. The sounds of trumpets were then drowned out by an oppressive roar before the shadows ahead of him shattered apart, revealing the form of a large white-furred tiger with black stripes running down his whole body. Megumi readied himself to be attacked immediately but was shocked by what he saw next as before his eyes. The Shikigami started rising slowly as before his now permanently crimson eyes with its own blinding azure orbs of fire. It stood up on 2 feet and faced him eye to eye. His tail then lit on fire with a brilliant blue flame, with the back of his neck lighting up with the same azure flames. Shortly after that, the divine tiger's eyes shone with a brilliant azure flame that reached even his breath. It has been an age since last I was summoned. Would-be Lord, you stand before the tiger funeral, the divine general's right-hand man and guard. What is thy name? The Shikigami demanded. Wow, I thought that since the last record of you was so old, it must have been wrong. But you really can talk, huh? Megumi said with a small sense of awe before shaking his head. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter, does it? Learn my name and learn it well. My name is Fushiguro Megumi, your soon-to-be master. Fushiguro Megumi, for thine sake, I hope thy words are those of confidence and not arrogance. For I shall not hold back against thee, prepare thyself, and do not disappoint me like many of those before thine self. Funeral Tiger commanded, before bringing his hands up into a fighting stance that showed experience. Disappoint you? How would I do that? Megumi asked while bringing his hand up into his own stance, grabbing Kage as he did. Most before thyself rushed through the subjugation of all the rest of thine brethren, without taking heed to master the foundations of Jujutsu. They treated us as mere tools to the slaughter to push their ambitions. Few were worthy of myself and none were worthy of commanding the divine general. The Shikigami stated solemnly. Checks out to me, I can tell from his cursed energy and form, he's about 3 or 4 Sukuna fingers strong. And if the records left were accurate, the last time he was summoned was about 400 years ago during the peak of the Edo era, and even then, he slaughtered his summoner. He seems to be the honorable type, so maybe this'll work and lessen the effort required from me. Megumi considered. Alright then, Funeral Tiger, allow me to prove myself to be different from my ancestors. Let us make a binding vow. Megumi declared as he stuck his blade deep into the tatami mat of the dojo. What is he doing? Kujisaki questioned, confused from what was happening. No, hold up. Let him cook. Moki said, getting off of the wall she was leaning on and walking closer to the fight. A binding vow? Very well, you have caught my attention, aspiring lord. Speak your piece. This is an established dojo within a holy ground of Jujutsu. It would be a shame to ruin or mar it with our battle. How about this instead, you and I fight an honorable duel with nothing more than our base abilities. I won't even summon any Shikigami or use my weapons. The black-haired man declared, placing his right hand upon his chest in a dramatic fashion. How intriguing, it has truly been too long since I have had the chance to fight a genuine duel. What are the rules of this duel? Questioned the divine guard, now wholly interested in this idea. Just like I said before, no weapons, no Shikigami on my side. We stay in this dojo and the first to land 3 clean hits on the other without being hit is the winner. When I win, you will be tamed without needing to be killed. And if I lose, I will sit down and allow you to kill me as you wish. Megumi explained with a grin, moving his right hand to raise 2 of his fingers to illustrate his point. Isn't that a bit reckless? It's fine. He's probably gonna pull something stupid and hit him 3 times in a second. Ho-ho? I am quite surprised to meet one with so much bravado as thyself, but very well. I accept your duel and its terms. The binding vow will let us both know who won immediately, so there is no need for a witness. Let us begin. Funeral Tiger declared, excited for an honorable duel after so long. The flames on his tail and back fired up with his rising spirit. Let's. Megumi said with a grin that hid a sly intent beneath. The Shikigami and summoner rushed at each and started exchanging hits as they clashed. For every hit that the divine guard would land, Megumi would land 2 of his own. This went on for the next 3 minutes as neither of them could land 3 consecutive attacks on the other. Eventually the Shikigami threw an azure flame-infused haymaker at the black-haired man's stomach in the middle of his opponent's recovering period. I said I wouldn't use any Shikigami or weapons. I never said anything about my incarnations. I'll have to stick to one that is mostly undetectable or doesn't cause many physical changes. Let's end this quickly and move on to other things. Megumi smiled as he fell backwards to avoid the attack, seeming to foolishly give his opponent the perfect opportunity to win. Incarnation, Great Serpent. This incarnation grants Megumi Fushiguro a sort of heat vision, paralytic saliva, and venom. Along with that, it grants him impossibly small scales that cover his entire body that increase his resistance against blunt and slashing damage by a good amount. and most importantly give him an impossibly dexterous and flexible body which will be essential for Megumi's plan to finish the fight right this instant. As predicted, the Shikigami immediately tried to go on the offensive and end the fight, playing into his hand. As Megumi's arm bent unnaturally against the ground in a way that pushed him under the tiger's legs, all the while he threw a hand to the side as he did so. The hand landed a surprising palm hit against his opponent's right knee at an impossible angle, causing him to be pushed out of position and be wide open for an attack. Using this opening, Megumi almost slithered up from his place on the ground while balancing himself upside down on one hand. The black-haired man threw an inverted roundhouse kick that struck at the tiger's head, marking his second hit. Immediately as he did, he pushed himself into the air by pushing himself up with one hand and performed a somersault in the air to get above his opponent right as he turned to hit him in return. "Is that even necessary?" Kujisaki questioned as a sweat drop fell down her forehead. Even the curse in her grasp seemed confused. "Haha, what a show-off." Moki simply laughed, enjoying the free impromptu show. Taking advantage of his opponent's blunder, Megumi simply threw a devastating punch that slammed into the tiger's head, slamming it onto the tatami mat beneath them and causing it to shatter apart. The black-haired man then landed ahead of him, before turning around and simply waiting for his opponent to get up. Both the fighters paused as Funeral Tiger pulled himself off the ground. Megumi simply looked at him with a smile while quietly dispelling his incarnation. "Well, it seems like I won our duel, Funeral Tiger." Megumi simply stated and waited for his opponent to reply as both of them could feel their binding vow come into effect. "Yes, it seems you have. It has indeed been too long since I had a good and honorable battle with a worthy opponent. My skills have rusted after so long. I hope you allow me to hone my craft against you once again, Master." The Shikigami said in reverence as he bowed, accepting Megumi as the victor and establishing their bond without the need for him to be killed. "Cool, I got a meeting with the Amigo clan in about 30 minutes, so we're gonna have to move quickly. Funeral Tiger is too wordy, so from now on your name is Tai Lung, got it?" The black-haired man announced shamelessly. "Also start talking more normally when possible, it's a pain to write your dialogue." "Shameless bastard, that's from that movie we watched with Yuji the other day, he's not even trying to be creative." Nobara growled out, crushing the curse in her hands once again. "And the guy in the movie isn't even a tiger, he's a leopard, you cheap pig." "Aye, very well, if that is what you will. Then so it shall be, I will now be known as Tai Lung in addition to my original name," the Shikigami said, accepting the name without much incident. "Heads up." Moki called out to Nobara with a cheeky smile. The orange-haired girl barely had enough time to look up before she saw an onyx blade slice just millimeters away from her face and kill the fourth-grade curse in her hand instantly. "Damn it! Warn a girl before you start swinging that thing around. You almost cut my frigging nose off." Kujisaki cried out in indignation, before looking down at her clothes and finding them covered in blood, making her scream even harder in outrage. "Shush, just be more perceptive next time. Tai Lung, do your thing," Megumi ordered, trying to test out his Shikigami's ability immediately. The tiger nodded and reached his paw forwards where the curse used to be, shortly after a tiny orb of brilliant blue flames appeared in the place where it died. That orb then flew towards Tai Lung, who held it in his paws for a moment before it floated to his maw where he swallowed it whole. The flames on the Shikigami's back then flickered slightly as its luster grew after he had swallowed the curse's remnants. As the fire grew, so did the curse's maximum capacity of cursed energy, for that is the 9th Shikigami's true ability. In addition to having a great base of strength, it also was capable of controlling flames made of pure cursed energy which he could output at insane levels. However, the way he was capable of maintaining his power was the Shikigami's ability to devour the leftover remnants of the soul of whatever living being died in his presence. Doing so grants Funeral Tiger all of the remaining cursed energy within that being to be added to his grasp indefinitely until it has been used up. The best way to describe it would be that if Funeral Tiger's normal maximum cursed energy capacity was 100, then devouring the remnants of another soul would increase his available pool of energy, exceeding his normal maximum capacity, for example, 1/20/100. A truly terrifying ability that could threaten thousands if left unchecked for too long. To mourn is to accept the failings of the past, to take in the agony which makes up our lives and instill it to be a part of your own self. For it is the duty of the living to take on the burdens of the dead. Funeral Tiger declared, almost as if reciting an ancient ritual he hadn't undertaken in ages. It also explains why Sukuna never bothered to use it in my past life. I doubt the mad bastard's ego could handle having to borrow cursed energy from those he deems beneath or weaker than himself. Not that it would have affected Satoru much to begin with. Megumi considered as he found a solution to a question that plagued him for a long while. Good, now that you have been tamed. All that remains is the big man himself, the Divine General Mahoraga. It would be my honor to help you along the path of the Lord of Shadows, Master. I believe that under your command, our Divine General will finally find a worthy master for the first time in all of history. Atop a luxurious hotel in the heart of the Ginza shopping district was a penthouse floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the starry night sky to those within. Inside the room, the smell of cigarettes and high-class alcohol permeated throughout. Within the room were two sorcerers who were enjoying their time with a well-deserved rest after a day of hard work of culling curses. Megumi was on his phone typing away and responding to a certain white-haired man, while Mai was enjoying a glass of high-quality wine. Well, it looks like Satoru needs me for something important tomorrow morning, though knowing him. That could either be a particularly stupid-looking curse or the revival of Ryoman Sukuna, so I'm gonna hit the hay soon. Megumi said as he stood up from his place on the couch. Mai turned her face up at him with a knowing look and nodded to him, placing her glass back down on the small table before her. Wanna have another round before bed? Megumi asked as he walked towards the large queen-sized bed while slipping off his pure obsidian robe. Mai's smile deepened into a smirk as she stood up from her place and walked to join him with a sway in her hips as her pure white robe began to loosen and fall off her body. Do you even need to ask, Tilda? 2 weeks later, 3 a.m. Zoshigaya Cemetery, Tokyo. Let's try again. Your form is decent but you lack concentration. Now chant with me here and don't let up on your stance. Got it. Megumi guided as he held a hand up into the pose of a curtain. Of course, big bro, I got it. Affirmed a young boy with light blue hair. He copied the black-haired man's pose almost perfectly. Emerge from the darkness, blacker than darkness. Purify that which is impure. Both of their voices overlapped, and although Megumi didn't supply any cursed energy for the creation of the curtain, it was still created by the cyan-haired boy. The curtain fell down upon the graveyard before them. He heard the young boy cheer slightly at his success. Good work UI, you managed to pull it off this time. Although you used too much cursed energy and the barrier is unstable, this is a good start. Megumi praised as he placed his hand over the young boy's head and ruffled his hair slightly. Hell yeah. It's all thanks to you, big bro. I wouldn't have been able to learn it without you. UI said with a giant grin, happy to have satisfied his teacher. Now to take care of the curses inside of the graveyard, little one. Here, take this, use it when they get close to you. It's a gift from a friend of mine, so make sure to not break it, okay? Megumi explained as he got on one knee and handed him a cursed dagger he had borrowed from Moki called the Slaughter Demon. The shadows beneath Megumi and UI bubbled over as from them emerged two of his Shikigami along with a merged beast had been born. First to be summoned was Blizzard, hopped out of his shadow and ran around the two of them for a moment before sitting down in front of them in attention with a short bark. The second to be summoned was Tai Lung, who emerged from the shadows with a giant leap. He twirled with the air for a moment before falling back down onto the ground in a perfect superhero landing. Maximum technique, merged beast, Quetzalcoatl. A huge feathered serpent emerged from the shadows with iridescent green and blue feathers. Its body is long and serpentine, adorned with vibrant, emerald green feathers that shimmer in the moonlight. The serpent's eyes are a piercing viridian green and its large, feathered wings blend avian and reptilian features in a powerful, divine form from which flowed droves of electricity. Alrighty then, these 3 will take care of most of the curses for you. All you need to do is lead them around and take care of any weak curses that slip by them. Got it, UI? Megumi asked, turning to his Shikigami slightly as he did so to make sure they got the message. I understand. The cyan-haired boy chirped cheerfully as he gripped the dagger with 2 hands. Very well, my brethren, and I will be sure to clear this shrine of the fallen and keep thine offspring safe, master. I swear upon my dash. The divine tiger promised, bowing his head along with his comrades who followed him, but was interrupted. He's not my kid Tai Lung. I'm just guiding him a little bit for his sister over there. Megumi interjected, gesturing to Mai who was sitting atop a stone fence cross-legged a few feet behind them. To this, she just giggled slightly and waved back at them before looking back down at her phone. Oh? But you act as if you are a close guiding figure to him, and to my knowledge, you are quite close to his guardian, are you not? Tai Lung seemed confused and showed so by slightly tilting his head to the side. Just shut up and go, will you? You 2 run off ahead and take care of the special grade threat in the crypt at the middle of the cemetery, but be sure to bring it out and let the boy watch you take it apart while making sure to devour all the cursed energy you can. Blizzard, you stick close to the little one and be sure to keep him safe above all else. He ordered with a deadpan expression. Stay safe, kid. I will. Megumi watched as UI and his Shikigami walked off into the cemetery, immediately finding curses and tearing them apart with complete ease. They took special care with keeping the boy safe while still allowing him to do his own damage without holding his hand too much. He nodded at this before turning around and walking towards where Mai was sitting with his hands inside the folds of his hari. As he walked, Megumi looked up at the moonlit skies where he saw dozens if not hundreds of crows circling around before spreading throughout the cemetery skies. Never thought you'd be so soft with children as you are, Megumi. It's almost like watching a different person. The silver-haired woman teased as he approached and leaned against the stone fence beside her. I suppose I do have a soft spot for them, which I don't for most other things. He replied as his shadows expanded and shot out a small TV, which Mai proceeded to tinker with for a moment as she placed a talisman at its back. So Mai, what's this about? You and I both know that a lower-level special grade alone isn't enough to spook you of all people enough to request assistance. And with your connections, you could have easily gotten any old window to teach him curtains if you wanted to. Megumi questioned. He watched the TV suddenly light up to show an aerial view of the cemetery while the silver-haired sorcerer hopped up onto the fence to sit beside him again, a little bit closer this time. He wanted to see you again, she confessed with uncharacteristic softness. Besides, this is good experience for him. Who better to train him than a special grade sorcerer? You taught him curtains in 5 minutes where it would have taken any old window at least a few days to, saves me more time. A sorcerer's time is expensive, no. Mai then revealed as she brought a hand up and rubbed her index and thumb together, purposely downplaying her first point. Megumi chose to play along and allowed the dismissal to go past without much care. The 2 of them watched the live footage of the cemetery as within it they saw curses be eviscerated by the dozen. Quetzalcoatl was the most eye-catching. They watched the feathered serpent charge up then fire off lightning breath, sending blasts of electricity like tidal waves that turned any curse it touched below grade 1 into ashes immediately. The merged beast then twirled around with its body roughly as air. Pressure gathered around it before firing off and shredding apart curses with ease. Then there was the divine tiger funeral. His brilliant azure flaming cursed energy shot around the cemetery in a blinding light show as he took care of curses by the dozen without even a bit of trouble. Not even first-grade curses could match up to his overwhelming power and skill. Lastly was UI. The boy was currently elbow-deep inside a third-grade curse as when he pulled back, the curse was gutted open like a fish with the help of Slaughter Demon. While the cyan-haired boy recovered, he left himself wide open to a backstab from several other curses. However, he didn't even notice their approach as they were torn apart before they could even get within 4 meters of him by Blizzard. Just good experience, huh? Careful, Mai. If you keep this up I might start thinking you're a good older sister. However, you said it yourself, I'm a special grade sorcerer, aren't I? My time isn't all that cheap either. He snarked as he folded his arms together at his chest, to which the silver-haired woman chuckled slightly. Well, Tilda, I suppose you've learned a lot about the importance of knowing your value after so much time together, HM? Fine, Tilda, you'll get your payment in about now. She placated in amusement while tapping away at her phone. Megumi felt a shake within his abyss a second after she said so. Reaching a hand into his hari, he pulled out his phone and looked at the first notification on it while ignoring an email from the higher-ups and a text from Satoru. A smirk covered his face as he read the number of yen that was deposited in his account, 1 followed by 6 zeros. HM, pleasure doing a business with you. Money really does make the world go round, doesn't it, Tilda? The two of them sat in comfortable silence as they watched a crypt in the middle of the cemetery explode outwards. From it emerged a huge curse that held special grade levels of cursed energy. Its entire body was marked with dozens upon dozens of ways in which it was possible to end your own life, chief among them being a purple noose tied around its saggy yet bulbous neck. Speaking of making the world go round, how are my investments doing with your assignment? I paid good money for them, so they better be paying off. Megumi inquired, utterly unaffected by the curse's appearance. Relax, Tilda. Most of the upper managers rolled over without much fuss after only a few words and exchange of hands. The rest followed suit without much issue after a little bit of probing and persuasion, she said with a sly smile as she placed her index finger at her cheek. You mean us beating? Isn't that what I just said, Tilda? The special grade curse was immediately surrounded and pounded into the dirt as soon as it made its entrance. Tai Lung threw an azure flame-infused palm blast point blank into the curse's gut, throwing it into the air, which was followed up on by the feathered dragon, who slammed it right back down with a veritable tidal wave of lightning. Ui stood there and watched in awe with sparkling eyes as he watched the monster be torn apart by the two Shikigami, unable to even defend itself while it was bounced around by the two of them with extreme ease. Blizzard himself seemed confused as to why he was so impressed, as to him it was an average everyday occurrence. There was even an unexpected offer extended to us from above. Oh? Tilda looks like one of those old men at the top finally took the time to wear his glasses and saw the writing on the wall. Aiming to save his fossilized hide in advance, instead of trying to reveal us to the rest of his fellow skeletons. I certainly didn't expect that. More like he finally realized what kind of monster was stealthily taking apart their base, and knew which side he wanted to be on before the shit really hits the fan. At that, Megumi turned to look at the silver-haired woman beside him, who just smiled and shrugged in response. He shook his head for a moment before looking back at the carnage on the TV, not having a rebuttal. However, in the time it took him to look back at the TV, the final remaining curse of the cemetery was nothing more than an ashen, broken and charred husk of its former self. Funeral Tiger and the merged beast were both standing above its crumbling body, sharing a sense of slight disappointment at how easy the mission was. This disappointment was not shared by the cyan-haired boy, who seemed even more excited than ever with his cheering. Well, now that that's done, I better get out of here. Got some other things to deal with, my time is precious after all. Get your talisman back, I just know you're gonna try and make me pay for a replacement if I take it with the TV. Megumi said dismissively, which drew a chuckle from the silver-haired woman. All right, Tilda. You know me too well, Tilda. Mai laughed out. She hopped off the fence and walked off towards the TV. She bent over forwards while reaching behind the TV to grab at the talisman, while not paying him any mind as he approached from behind. Tell Ui he can keep the dagger as a gift from me, you can keep the TV too. He whispered in her ear, before a loud slap sounded out throughout the moonlit sky. The silver-haired woman jolted upwards immediately and turned around to look at him, only to see his grinning face dissolve away into shadows before her very eyes, revealing himself to be a clone the entire time. As the cyan-haired boy approached with the Shikigami around him fading away into shadows as well, he paused in confusion as he watched his sister hold her rear with a smirk while looking at nothing. Well, Tilda, I may have taught him too much if he's pulling this on me now. Honestly, Tilda, scamming me of all people. She laughed out. She brought out her phone and proceeded to type out 4 words. It's an odd feeling, pride in someone else. Usual spot, for 30 a.m. Big sis? Why is your face all pink? Don't worry about it, UI. The next day, 8 a.m. Why are we the ones that have to do this? Don't we have people to do this kind of stuff for us? Nobara whined. She held 6 huge cloth bags filled to the brim with various foods and was surprisingly comfortable with them despite the weight. You're the one who left the countryside to live a lavish, independent life in the city. Getting groceries every now and then is a part of that independent life, you know? Megumi explained, in between taking sips of his coffee. Yeah, but because somebody eats as much as an average village does in a week during the span of a couple days. You aren't even helping me with carrying these bags. Didn't your mom teach you to take care of women like flowers? I yearn for true gender equality. I have no patience for one who talks about female privilege when it suits them, and then complains about someone not being a man when it's convenient. The black-haired man declared his ideals immediately without hesitation. And besides, you're handling them just fine. It's good endurance training for you. Just stop being a baby. He then continued on while waving his free hand dismissively. TCH, whatever? She simply said in response, not able to come up with a response that justified her complaints. The two of them continued walking towards their rooms with some small talk here and there, enjoying the calm autumn breeze. It was a rare sunny day with beautiful clear skies after all. However, as they approached their main building, Megumi grabbed Nobara by her shoulder and motioned for her to stop. Stop, there's 2 people approaching. If I were to hazard a guess, they're probably from the Kyoto school. The start of the Kyoto Sister School Goodwill event isn't too far off after all. He deduced. Should I be worried? Kujisaki asked, wanting to be sure that the situation warranted her attention or not as she placed the groceries to the side. Well, all except 2 of them are worthless weaklings, and even then the other 2 aren't strong enough to warrant much consideration. I guess maybe the idiot would be annoying due to his cursed technique. Megumi rubbed his chin in consideration for a moment before speaking again. But nah, they're weak as hell. Zero threat. He announced with a smile before downing the rest of his coffee in one gulp. Really? Seems like it's gonna be a fire sale of us kicking in the Goodwill event. It really will be. The 2 of them stood by and watched as within the next few seconds, 2 figures appeared before them on the street. One was a large muscular man with black hair in a top bun and the other a decently tall girl with long light blue hair. The muscular man had marched towards the 2 of them with strength and confidence in his posture while the blue-haired girl was covered in sweat due to her exerting herself to be able to catch up to him. I suppose now's as good a time as any. Nobara, meet some of the members of the Kyoto Sister School. This is Aoi Todo and Miwa. I want to say Asumi? To be honest, I'm not quite sure. I kinda forgot. He introduced them but drew a blank while trying to remember Miwa's last name. Poor girl, looks like that dude's been running her ragged all day from how much she's sweating. Kujisaki commented softly in sympathy while looking at Miwa's ragged form. It's Kasumi. Miwa corrected under her breath, not finding within herself the heart to do so actively despite the fact that she was internally celebrating and squealing at the fact that a sorcerer she admired had known her by name. Miwa has long, light blue hair that extends past her shoulders and frames her forehead. She also has dark, triangular eyebrows and asymmetric bangs. She wears a black, long-sleeved jacket over a light-colored button-down shirt and an all-black suit with a belt that she uses to hold her sword. I'm here for one thing and one thing only. It's about time we finally meet Fushiguro Megumi. The man those fossilized higher-ups decided to place at special grade status like Gojo, Okotsu, and Master. Fushiguro Megumi, I am here to ask you one question. Todo declared to the heavens with all his heart while taking off his jacket, causing Nobara and Miwa to both tense up in anticipation. Aoi Todo is a tall young man who stands about the same height as Satoru Gojo. He has a very defined, heavy muscular build and relatively tanned skin. He has small black eyes and shoulder-length black hair that is tied into a top-knot bun. One of his most notable features is the large scar running down the left side of Todo's face that he got from harsh training with Yuki. He currently wore a purple shirt with black pants that matched the jacket in his hands as part of his normal everyday uniform. Megumi Fushiguro. What kind of women do you like? Todo shouted out with ironclad conviction. This declaration drew several different contrasting reactions from the crowd present. From Miwa, it drew exasperation and tiredness at the role thrust upon her by her class leader. From Nobara, it was confusion and surprise at the unexpected reversal of what she expected to come from his mouth. And from Megumi, it was a giant grin as he knew exactly what to say in response to this and was anticipating this moment for a long time. If you like men, that's fine too. But depending on your answer, I'll beat you half to death even though you're a special grade. By the way, I like tall women with huge asses. Following Todo's declaration, an overwhelming silence covered the entire area as Miwa, Nobara, and the man himself all awaited Megumi's answer in anticipation. Well, before I answer, I need you to clarify, do you want my very specific tastes or just a vague answer? Megumi asked. Guys who have bad tastes are boring, and since your tastes reveal everything about a man, if you have boring tastes then you yourself must be boring. So be as specific as you like, but you had better not disappoint me and be boring or I'll pound your teeth until next week. Shouted out the scarred man immediately. The kind of woman I like would be a woman who could kick my ass in a fight, even if she wasn't stronger than me. I also want someone with a strong personality. I can't handle spineless women that provide zero input. Megumi answered, not caring to filter his inner desires in the slightest. As the black-haired man continued on with divulging his tastes, one could watch as the orange-haired girl beside him went through several stages of reactions. At first it was confusion at his choice to humor the odd man, then it was exasperation at him actually answering him seriously, and then it was disbelief at the sheer insanity of the situation. The latter was shared by Miwa Kasumi, who couldn't be more speechless if she tried. As for her body, I would say I like boobs just as much as the next guy, but personally I like thighs the most. I would say the hottest thing a woman can have is to be able to crush your skull into powder with her thighs alone. The special grade sorcerer nodded along as he continued explaining his tastes, not caring in the slightest as he felt Nobara's almost disgusted stare. I'd also prefer if she were older than me if possible. I do have a big thing for MILFs after all, but I'm fine with one that's younger. And of course she has to be at least easy on the eyes if I want to be with her for a longer period of time. He then concluded. At first there was pure silence after he finished speaking as the other three people all took in his words with many varied reactions. However, it was Nobara Kujisaki who spoke first. Man, I don't know whether to feel disgusted or pleasantly surprised. On one hand your taste isn't completely perverted and on the other I have a small urge to stab you. She confessed. That's... Todo muttered out, his face being covered by shadows as he did so while everyone else held their breaths in anticipation. That's not boring at all. The scared man shouted out in excitement. This caused Miwa to sigh in relief besides him, as she believed that he wouldn't cause a scene and fight now since he was satisfied with Fushiguro's taste. All the while Nobara groaned in annoyance, knowing that the next few moments might cause her to lose brain cells. You actually have decent taste. While I can't say thighs are the best thing about a woman, they're definitely up there. And your choice of women with a backbone, you truly deserve to be a special grade sorcerer. Aoi Todo decreed from the bottom of his heart while pointing towards his new good friend with revelry and joy. I'm glad you think so, Todo. Tall girls with big asses aren't too bad either, they're definitely one of the all-time greats. Megumi said as he reached a hand forwards and offered it towards the equally tall man. I was afraid you might be boring and I would have had to beat you within an inch of your life. I am glad that wasn't the case, my good friend. The scared man admitted as he grasped the other man's hand with a giant grin which was reciprocated. Clap. So am I. Thank God, I thought they were gonna fight for a second there. Kamo-san would have scolded me so hard if they did. Miwa sighed out as she let out a breath she had been holding for a while. Why did you have to say that? You jinxed it. Nobara groaned out while facepalming. I'm sorry. The blue-haired girl cried out in response. Wanna have a small spa before I leave? I have a Takoda-chan signing event to get to soon. Todo asked, uncaring of Miwa's plight. Heck. Why not? Megumi replied, his grin widening as he gripped the other man's left hand with his right even harder. Then faster than the other two could even blink, Megumi's fist blurred forwards Todo's face and brutally smashed into it. However, Megumi had still not let go of the other man's hand, causing him to merely turn his face to the side in slight surprise. Wait, Zenin-san, please don't dash. Miwa pleaded, worried about her classmate, but was stopped in her tracks when she saw her classmate's face be covered by a grin. Good idea, my friend, let us test our mettle. Todo declared, his hand gripping the other man's even harder. He threw a punch of his own which Megumi made no move to dodge, taking it on the chin. He paused for a moment to take in the pain of the hit, before throwing his own again, with this time having more power behind it, not caring as he received a punch of his own right afterwards. My god. This is so dumb, this cannot get any dumber. Nobara said as she watched the two of them start to nonsensically beat the shit out of each other. The both of them started slow with only a little bit of their base physical strength, then started ramping it up slowly as they matched the other's pace. Punch after punch, hit after hit, neither cared even as blood and spit flew off of their exchange. Megumi had to actively limit himself with every punch and be extra careful to match his opponent's strength while suppressing his surging bloodlust. However, slowly but surely, they reached each other's limit in physical strength. I should have guessed, you're a special grade for a reason after all. Todo laughed out as blood started to drip from his nose. You shouldn't take it too hard, I'm hardly a normal human anymore. Megumi chuckled, his face being marred by a small mark or two but not much more damage. It was completely clear to all present, in pure physical strength, Fushiguro Megumi has outclassed Aoi Todo by a significant margin due to his several permutations. Shall we ramp it up, or do you concede? Megumi questioned, bringing up his left arm once more, which was burning with obsidian cursed energy. Do you even need to ask? The scared man brought up his right arm as it lit up with his own cursed energy. If one was paying close attention, they would even see cursed energy waft off into heart-shaped globs of cursed energy. The two of them proceeded to begin their impromptu slugfest once more. This time they started with only a little bit of cursed energy reinforcement before ramping up to higher and higher levels while matching each other's strength as much as possible. I was wrong, this just got so much dumber. Nobara sighed out, utterly exasperated at the situation. This continued for the next few minutes, even as both of their faces were covered by bruises and blood. Neither stopped the test nor did they take a second to breathe. They even started to laugh like maniacs while throwing haymaker after haymaker at the other's face without remorse. However, as they ramped up their cursed energy reinforcement, one thing was becoming perfectly clear. And it was that Todo, while an incredibly strong sorcerer in his own right, was simply incapable of matching the special grade sorcerer in pure strength. Megumi brought his arm backwards alongside a maniacal laugh, instinctually causing it spark with golden electricity as he did so, before it shot forwards into the scared man's face with a vicious brutality which caused a loud crunch to sound out as he was flung backwards and through a wall. He stood there for a moment, breathing in and out with a grin as he waited for his sparring opponent to get up so that they could continue their fight. He paused for a moment as he saw Nobara approach him and stand by his side. He passively brought his arm up to touch his face and felt some bruises already beginning to form. You two about done beating the brain cells out of each other? 'Cause I honestly lost some by just watching the two of you do. Whatever that was. She called out, wanting to finally be done with this whole mess and go home. Almost, I have a feeling he and I have a few more things to do before we're satisfied. The black-haired man stated, moving his hand up to his face and wiping all the blood off with one 1 swipe, feeling all the bruises on it as he did so. For real? How much more do you two need to brutalize Kujisaki questioned, but cut off by a loud crashing sound, she instinctively dodged to the side and narrowly avoided a cluster of broken rubble that scattered in the air before landing around Megumi. Clap! Oh, this crafty bastard dash! Megumi immediately noticed that each broken bit of rubble was filled to the brim with cursed energy. However, he was unable to stop the scared man's plan as he appeared from behind him and roundhouse kicked him in the back of his head. Clap! Megumi turned around to catch the man but watched him instantly disappear with a clap right as he was about to land a hit. And just as he missed, a presence appeared behind him for a moment before he was kicked in the back of his knee. Clap! He had barely managed to stay on his feet after that surprise hit. However, he was immediately assaulted a moment after by a punch to the liver. Megumi gritted his teeth in pain, but he refused to fall into a cycle and readied himself to counter the next attack. He went from the front, then behind, then to my right. That means the most likely place he's coming from should be to the left, but that's what he wants me to think. He must be coming from behind again. Megumi deduced, as he readied himself to backhand Todo just as he swaps again. Clap! Megumi swung his fist backwards with blinding speed just as he heard the clap, expecting to smash into his opponent's body, only to end up hitting nothing at all. He never switched. Before he could turn to defend himself, a pair of arms burning with cursed energy wrapped around his waist before he felt himself be lifted up from the ground. Shit, shit, shit dash! Megumi elbowed the man holding him to no avail as within less than a second, he was suplexed into the ground behind them so hard he crashed through the ground and was pushed a few meters further due to the momentum. Don't feel too bad, Fushigo bro. There is nothing my IQ of 530,000 cannot analyze and outsmart. Todo declared while turning around before he tapped his head with one hand and kept the other on his hip. But, why you could say he planted a dumbass tree, ah ha ha ha. Nabara quipped before she laughed at her own joke, having long lost her annoyance and was taking the chance to laugh at her classmate's misfortune. I am done. They watched as the rubble was shattered, leaving behind only dust as Megumi got up from his place on the ground. One could see veins bulging on his forehead as he heard Nabara's mockery before it faded away and was replaced by a devious smile. Since you seem bored and in the mood for a laugh, so how's this for a joke? Megumi said. The shadows under him expanded as from within them emerged a group of merged beasts, albeit a basic kind. Merged beast, the Well's unknown abyss. This basic merger incorporates Gamma as the base and enhances them in a merger with new to create winged toads that can fly with increased mobility, as well as use their tongues to restrain opponents or catch projectile attacks. The merged beasts were not like the rest of their brethren as they weren't built with maximum efficiency and power to be extracted in mind. They were instead merely summoned for one purpose, pettiness. You guys go and give Auntie Nabara a big hug, will you? Uncle Todo and I need to have a chat. The black-haired man ordered, summoning this merged beast specifically because he knew that Kujisaki was incredibly disgusted by toads of all kinds. Oh hell no! You little bastards better keep your distance or I will nail all your asses back onto your daddy's face. Kujisaki shouted out, pulling out a nail gun as she did so. At Megumi's recommendation, she had started using a nail gun in conjunction with her cursed technique about a month ago. She's using the nail gun to supplement her battles and fighting at long ranges as well as to have a quick-release sidearm for her technique while also slowly transforming it into a cursed tool which would be very compatible with her technique. The group of merged beasts flew in her direction. She also readied her hammer and nail in preparation to make good on her promise. The merged beasts and her started a dance right after, where she would strike down any Shikigami that close and they would aim to give her a hug. And as for you, Megumi's shadows didn't stop at merely summoning a merged beast as they began to seep further throughout the area, covering a good percentage of the arena and subsequently devouring anything left on the ground, specifically any rubble that contains remnants of cursed energy that could be used by Todo for his cursed technique. Can your 530,000 IQ predict this? The shadows under Megumi bubbled over as if they were preparing to summon a powerful Shikigami. Even a merger was possible with how large the area of the shadows were. It has to be a Shikigami. With how much cursed energy, it might even be another merged beast or that funeral tiger Kamo told me about. Todo deduced, readying himself to use his cursed techniques of boogie woogie to outwit and outsmart his opponent once more. I'll just swap with the Shikigami as soon as he summons it and lay. Todo continued to plan but was stopped when he saw something he could not have expected being shot flying out of Megumi's shadow at absurd speeds. Is that an Alaskan king-sized bed? Miwa mumbled under her breath. She was unable to comprehend everything that was happening around her due to the cognitive dissonance of the situation. On one hand, Kujisaki was currently being surrounded by seemingly unending flying toads with wings and was currently at a standstill trying to keep her ground. It was as if she was being assaulted by a horde of zombies that wanted to devour her flesh. It didn't help that Megumi was actively creating more to replace the fallen Shikigami. And on the other, Todo was just slammed backwards by an utterly gigantic bed that must have been an Alaskan king-sized bed, mattress and all, and was currently being thrown into a wall due to the speeds the bed was shot at him. It was. Why do you have an Alaskan king-sized bed in your shadow? Because you never know when you might need one. Miwa just stood there, utterly speechless and unable to reply as she watched Megumi laugh out towards the heavens. A few moments later, the bed that covered Todo was thrown to the side as the scared man made his way back towards the fight. How was that for a surprise, brodo? Megumi quipped, calling back to the nickname the man gave to him a few moments prior. Well, I won't lie, Fushigo bro, that really took me off guard. You were right, I couldn't have predicted that. Todo confessed, reaching up to his eye and wiping away a bit of blood that was covering it. Damn. I didn't expect to be dirted so much in the spa. I need to go visit Yeri-san now and heal before taking a bath. I can't face Takoda-chan like this, he stated, looking around as he tried to find the way to go to the medical ward. In another universe, this would have been the end of the encounter, as both Fushiguro Megumi and Todo Aoi would have gone their separate ways after bonding to become very good friends. However, fate had another thing in mind for him. Shit yourself. Everyone instantly froze in place at that voice. It was as if a primal fear had shot through the veins of everyone present, no matter how strong. Even Fushiguro and Kujisaki froze in terror, as although they recognized the owner of the voice, it only brought them more fear. For a moment, there was no sound as everyone awaited the inevitable, before the sound of a loud and wet fart echoed throughout the area, causing everyone to turn towards its origin point. There stood Todo Aoi, utterly frozen, with his face being filled with surprise and horror. What are you guys doing? Why are you fighting? What's going on? Weren't you guys fighting to the death here? Panda shouted out as he approached the group in aims to stop what they thought was a hard-fought battle. We were just sparring and had even stopped right before you guys came in here. Megumi answered them, wiping sweat off his face in relief that he wasn't targeted by cursed speech. Mustard leaf? Inumaki questioned as he approached the group. Yes, Inumaki, you just made an innocent man shit himself for no reason. Moki chuckled out behind everyone, causing them all to turn around and look at her in surprise due to them not sensing her approach. Also, Megumi, you might want to let up on the endless horde of winged toads. I think Nabara is regressing into the Doom Slayer or something, she commented, pointing to the side with her thumb as she did so. They all turned to look at where the orange-haired girl was, only to find her standing atop a mound of fallen Shikigami and covered with black blood. She held in one hand the body of a smaller winged toad that she was crushing into shadow paste with her bare hand, and on the other she held a nail gun that was enhanced with her technique while she was shooting other merged beasts with it. I mostly did it out of annoyance and because it seemed funny. Don't your Shikigami die permanently? Not if they're merged together. I can make as many of them as I want. Just as Nabara finished slaughtering another dozen winged toads, they all collectively faded away into nothingness, causing her to fall on her ass right afterwards. This won't do. I can't let Takoda-chan see that I shit myself. Todo shouted out, causing everyone to turn and look at him again. Clap! Fish flakes! Inumaki squeaked out. He felt something wet appear in his pants. Oof, that's rough, buddy. Panda commented, patting the shorter boy on the shoulder while closing his nose to block out the smell. Not the UNO reverse, ha ha ha. Moki shouted out, being barely able to breathe from how hard she was laughing at her classmate's misfortune. Welp, that's unfortunate for you, Inumaki. But you should really read the room next time before forcing a man to shit himself. Anywho, Brodo, follow me. Let's get you to Shoko and get you healed up in time to reach Takoda-chan. Megumi said as Moki laughed her ass off in the background. Why are you actually calling him by that name? Moki questioned in between bouts of laughter. Well, what can I say? It's grown on me. All right, Fushigo bro. Lead the way. 5 minutes later. Shoko's office. Yo Shoko, you here? Megumi called out as he entered the office with Todo by his side. Where else would I be? She replied from the back of the room. Shoko was currently stitching together the side of a man who had it cut open in an encounter with a cursed spirit gone wrong. Her face held tiredness as her eye bags were evident at a first glance. Just here to show you something cool, he replied, making his way towards her. HM? What is it, Gumi? Need heals? She asked, somewhat confused. Megumi's crimson eyes seemed to shine brighter as a glob of shadow shot out of him, before forming into a clone of himself. This clone went on to gain rings in its eyes and walked forwards, reaching Shoko's patient and holding his wound. Positive energy flowed from the clone's hand and flowed into the patient's body as before their very eyes. The wound was closed together within a second. The positive energy went on throughout the patient's body and healed them completely. I feel perfectly fine. It's like I was never hurt at all. The patient cried out in celebration. Thanks I guess, Gumi? I was just about to do that anyways. What was the point? Shoko asked, grateful that he lessened her work required but confused as to why he did so. I'm getting to that, give me a sec. Brodo, do you trust me? Megumi asked, reaching into his Hari and pulled out Koge. Yes, Fushigo bro, I trust you with my life. Todo declared as he raised his left arm into a thumbs up. Good, hold your breath. Eh? Yach! Todo grunted in pain as Koge's razor-sharp edge sliced off his arm in a single swing, causing the other two in the room to gasp in shock. Megumi and his clone didn't blink as the latter walked towards Todo and held his injured arm with his own. Their shock didn't stop there as the clone channeled his own reversed cursed technique. The positive energy overflowed from his arm and into Todo's body. Then before their very eyes, the stump on Todo's arm began to morph and grow. At first it was the bones as Todo's hand regrew its skeleton in a mere 5 seconds, then over the next 15 seconds it was tissues, muscles, nerves, and tendons. And finally skin grew back over the hand, over the next 10 seconds. Sounds of shock echoed throughout the room as they had just watched a man lose his hand and regrow it in the span of less than 40 seconds. Well damn, that is cool. I can't do that yet. Shoko admitted, completely taken aback at his use of reversed cursed technique, through a clone no less. MHM, it is, but that's not all. Todo, can you take the guy with you and leave? Got something to talk to her about. Megumi requested dismissively as his clone finished healing Todo completely. Definitely, my friend. Thanks for the healing. Come on, guy. I can't make Takoda-chan wait for me. Teether idle. Oh, you know Takoda-chan? The voices of the two men were muffled by the door closing, leaving only Shoko and Megumi standing opposite to each other in the middle of the room. So what's this about Gumi? She asked as she ran a hand through her hair and pushed it back off of her face. Although she looked as if she hadn't slept in weeks, her beauty was even further enhanced by her eye bags and tired demeanor. As you've just seen, I can make a clone that's capable of healing a lot of things, even lost limbs. I'm saying this because I know how tired you've been from work recently. There's too much for you to do and not enough time for you to be you. To relax and have a break every now and then. Megumi explained. Go take a vacation, at least for a month or two. You deserve some time for yourself. Time to get more than 2 hours of sleep every night. I've got everything set up and ready for you. There's a car waiting for you outside. They'll take you to the airport, an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii. He revealed with an honest smile. I don't know what to say. Shoko admitted, seeming somewhat overwhelmed with all the information. You don't have to say anything, I did this for you. You've helped me so many times when I was at my lowest, it's only fair I do the same, no? The two of them stood there for a moment as he allowed it all to sink in. A few seconds later Megumi had to stabilize himself to not fall over as Shoko rushed forwards and hugged him tightly. They stood there in silence as the shorter woman pulled him down with her grasp. He just stayed there and let her take her time. I don't know if I said this before, so I'll just say it now. No matter happens in your life, I want you to know this, Tsugumi. I am so proud of the man you've become. Despite everything that's happened, I know that if it's you, you'll be able to fix everything in this broken-ass world. I'm sure it won't be too long before Tsumaki is up to see this too. Hey, come on now, Shoko. You're gonna make me tear up if you keep up with all this sappy talk. Ha ha, maybe then you would get over that workaholic mindset. What was being a special grade 2 little work? You needed to steal my work too. Shoko asked as she backed off and wiped away a tear that was building up in her eye. Shush, take this and go. Don't keep the man waiting for you. He left his daughter's piano recital to do this for me. Although I told him that I could just ask someone else, he refused to listen. Something about repaying a debt and dot. Megumi said, reaching his hand into his shadow before pulling out 2 12-packs of Heineken. Hell yeah. You know exactly how to make my day, don't you, Gumi? She shouted out before snatching both packs and opening one. Megumi watched in amusement as she proceeded to down an entire bottle of Heineken beer in less than 10 seconds, before grabbing another and downing it as well. He was about to ask her to take her time, pack and then go down to be driven to the airport. However, he paused as he felt the familiar shift in space from Satoru's limitless and knew he was about to teleport into the room. Shoko-o? Megumi, what are you doing here? Wait, is Shoko drinking again? Satoru asked right after teleporting in. He watched as Shoko grabbed another bottle and downed it in 6 seconds flat. Evidently. Megumi said as reached into his hari quietly while Satoru made his way towards them. Man, I haven't seen drunk Shoko in a while. You know, one time when we were in our 2nd year and we were on a vacation in Hokkaido on Christmas, she got so drunk she killed Santa. Gojo revealed with a giant grin. He was reminiscing about that day in the cabin with all his friends. Gojo wasn't able to reminisce for too long as he was forced to dodge to the side in order to avoid being stabbed by Megumi's inverted spear of heaven. He didn't do so fast enough as his cheek was cut in the process of doing so. Oh. What the hell, Megumi, why'd you do that? Gojo asked as he healed his cheek with his reversed cursed technique. Oh, Tilda? Don't think I forgot what you did after our fight. Knocking me out was one thing since I lost that domain clash. But that drawing? Is another thing. Megumi growled out as he pointed the special grade cursed weapon at him. You know, on second thought, perhaps giving you that weapon wasn't the best idea I've had. I concur. Satoru shot out of the room running to escape his enraged little brother's assault. The black-haired man sprinted after him with the inverted spear of heaven at one hand and another holding his phone which he used to call someone. Moki, get your ass over here quick! We have a white-haired bastard to gut open like a fish. Shoko stood alone in her office. In her hands were the 2 final bottles of Heineken remaining as she had completed both 12 packs of beer in the span of 2 minutes. In her now drunken stupor, she brought one hand up above her head and the other ahead of her before proclaiming to the world once again for the first time in too long. Throughout the Buffalo Wild Wings and the Heineken, I alone am the honored drunk. 10 a.m. Tokyo Jujutsu Tech School welcoming area. Mom dash. That's right, that's right. Call for your mama. The Tokyo school students watched in amusement as Megumi held their classmate in a headlock, refusing to let go even as he struggled to breathe. In front of them was the Kyoto Sister School. Their students just stood there speechless at the happenings in front of them. "Who's your uncle, huh? Who's your damn uncle, you little shit?" Megumi demanded, his left hand moving to the top of his victim's head before he dug his fist into it and twisted in order to administer as much pain as possible. "Why you are. Please let me go," Yuji cried out, barely able to breathe due to the headlock. "Say it," the black-haired man ordered viscously, enjoying the fact that he had finally completed his get back at the three that drew that art on his forehead. "Please let me go, you Uncle Fushiguro. I won't do it again," Itadori begged, his face starting to turn slightly blue from the lack of oxygen. After hearing what he wanted, Megumi pushed Yuji away with one hand, allowing the pink-haired teen to finally breathe freely. Cough cough. "Damn Megumi, was that truly necessary? My damn neck aches now." Yuji coughed out as he rubbed his neck with his right arm. Megumi watched as he did so and spotted something that brought down his mood and reminded him of a somewhat concerning report he had received from Rin. Along Itadori Yuji's right arm was a medium-sized scar that ran along from his elbow to the middle of his forearm. According to the report he had gotten from Rin, it seems like Mahito was a bigger problem than he was before. Although things went along the same lines as before, with Kento-san and Yuji fighting Mahito together. It seems like my existence has pushed the patch-faced troglodyte to be even stronger from my effect on the balance of the world. Megumi rubbed his chin in thought, starting to zone out as Principal Yaga arrived and started explaining the rules of the event. If that happened with him, it's very likely that the others are stronger as well. I don't even want to imagine how much stronger that rat bastard has become. It's probably been a buffet of powerful curses for him to collect as he wishes. I need to get Rin to check on the sightings and locations of all known special-grade curses. Megumi continued zoning out as he heard the rules of the Goodwill event be explained to everyone else, only focusing again when he saw Satoru being held in a one-armed Nelson hold. Taking a moment to quickly take out his phone and take a picture of it. "Remember, you're all comrades in the greater battle. This is all in order for you to get to know each other and yourselves even better for the future when you work as comrades. Naturally, killing or otherwise permanently harming your opponents is strictly prohibited," Yaga explained, his voice sounding somewhat strained as he squeezed Satoru even harder. "Now you all have the next 2 hours to plan and talk with each other. We start at noon," the principal announced. 30 minutes later. Care to repeat that?" Kujisaki asked, feeling a mix of intrigue and annoyance. "It's not really that complex. Moki and I will not fight during the Spirit Bash race. I'll just send a Shikigami out to secure as many of the points as possible, most likely all of them. You, Yuji, Panda and Inumaki will be the only ones fighting," Megumi repeated in between taking bites out of a protein bar. "Okay, first of all, why is it that you talk like they're definitely going to be attacking us? What if they just ignore us and, go to the actual objective of this event?" She rebuked, wanting to know the reason behind his assuredness. What took Kujisaki Nobara off guard was Moki's immediate reaction of laughter, which was soon shared by Megumi as well. "You know something we don't?" Panda questioned, confused as to why they laughed. "Tuna mayo. It's quite simple really, it's Itadori. They're definitely gonna try to kill Wim," the black-haired woman asserted, seeming quite confident in her deduction. "Who? Why do they want to kill me? I didn't even do anything wrong," Itadori cried out in outrage. "The same reason we had them think you dead, because you're Sukuna's vessel. As long as you have that geezer inside you, the higher-ups and clans won't stop trying to kill you. Directly or otherwise," Megumi explained. "Goddamn, that frigging sucks. Why'd this asshole choose my body of all possible ones as the one to be his vessel?" Yuji complained. This complaint caused a mouth to open on his face from which Sukuna himself spoke his piece. "You are the one who ate my finger first, you stupid brat. You think I wanted your unintelligent ass as my vessel? He's kinda right about that, Yuji. You did eat that finger." Megumi pointed out. Whose side are you on? Yuji exclaimed comically to the amusement of everyone else present. Sukuna then took his chance to insult them both at the same time. See? Even the furry gets it. Sukuna asserted, taking no small amount of pleasure in insulting both his greatest annoyances at the same time. How in the hell do you even know what that means? The black-haired man demanded, unintentionally crushing what was left of his protein bar in his hand. I have been stuck in this brat's body for the past 2.5 months. I am more than capable of understanding modern culture with this much time. The king asserted with confidence before withdrawing from Yuji's face, his aim being achieved. Well, Yuji's stupidity and Sukuna learning about pop culture notwithstanding, what's our plan? It's gonna be a 4v5, right? Nobara called out, wanting to make sure they're all on the same page since they're going in without their heavy hitters. Actually no, it's gonna be a 3v4. Megumi corrected, flicking his hand slightly before using his Max Elephant incarnation to power wash it clean of any smashed up bits of food. Ah, salmon. Mustard leaf Todo? You're mostly right, Inumaki. Todo is definitely not working with the rest of his classmates. Honestly, I'd bet 80% of my fortune he outright told them to go die. He's definitely coming after us alone, and if Camo is even half as smart as he thinks he is, he's most likely planning around it and whatever plan he thinks we're going with. The special grade sorcerer started. So our solution is quite simple. We're going to plan around the plan that they are planning around our plan. He declared with excitement in his voice. My head hurts. Yuji mumbled while he tried to work out the mental gymnastics of whatever the hell his friend just said. Megumi's JS being stupid, the blindfolded idiot rubbed off on him too much. The plan is simple, you're gonna deal with Todo one-on-one while the other 3 are gonna take care of the other 4. Moki explained exasperatedly, waving her hand in the air dismissively as she did so. That one comment caused Megumi to pause in his place with utter shock and horror. It was as if someone had poured ice-cold water down his back. Why ain't sure Itadori can handle it? Todo's pretty strong. I mean, he gave Fushiguro over there a run for his money, didn't he? Panda pointed out, recalling the beaten and battered face of Megumi when they had arrived last time. No. That was just him and Megumi having a bros moment, although now that I think about it, Yuji and Todo would probably get on disgustingly well. Nobara remarked, feeling a small sense of horror at that realization. Ding ding ding. That's the plan. Yuji will take care of Todo while becoming best friends in the process. The 3 of you will take care of the rest of the fodder. I mean, our opponents should be a piece of cake and will be done just in time for lunch. Megumi announced after taking a moment to recover from the psychological damage, ignoring the deadpan stares he received after he finished. Your true feelings are showing, Megumi. 12 p.m. Tokyo Tech Forest. Start! Satoru, you bastard, BZZZZZZT. I hope those 2 use protection. Megumi commented while side-eyeing a nearby speaker, scratching his chin lightly as he did so. God, I hope. Imagine a cum sprout of the white-haired idiot running around. Moki covered her mouth with a hand as she involuntarily imagined a child of Gojo running around. Or, it'd probably be the beginning of the rapture. Nobara cringed at the very thought. Well, anyways. Tai Lung, get your ass out here. The black-haired man commanded, trying to change the subject. His shadow extended outwards as Funeral Tiger jumped out from them and stood in front of him with his head bowed, awaiting orders. You know the drill, go out and slaughter all the curses released in the forest and be sure to devour all the souls they leave behind. Your wish is my command. The Shikigami blurred from his place and surged ahead faster than one could blink, immediately honing in onto a target and making his way towards it to fulfill his master's order. Todo's coming in, you're up, Itadori. Moki called out. She had one hand up into the air sideways that she then took back and placed in her pockets. Wait, how do you know that? You can't sense cursed energy. Yuji questioned but went on alert anyways as he prepared to make his move. If you could feel and see as much as she can, you would be able to know that too. She's right either way, he's reaching here in the next 5 seconds. Megumi explained as he pulled up a hand and started counting down the seconds with each of his fingers. For real? Itadori cried out as he then felt Todo's approaching cursed energy as well. They all felt a low rumbling noise approaching as soon a loud crash shattered a tree apart ahead of them, which revealed Todo's shirtless form barreling down towards them before stopping right ahead of everyone. Oh, hey Fushigo bro. This event is boring, fight me. Todo immediately shouted as he saw his friend again. Actually Brodo, meet Yuji. I think you and him will be good friends. Megumi said with a smile, gesturing to the side with his thumb as he did so. Who? Who dash? Aoi Todo followed the direction that was pointed towards by his friend's thumb, only to be cut off and have his vision be filled with a sudden knee to the face from Itadori Yuji. The force of the impact threw him and the pink-haired teen away further through the forest and away from the rest of the Tokyo students. Megumi motioned for his comrades to follow him, and they did, following along with him as they arrived at a small clearing that was located close to the fight between Yuji and Todo. So what now? Nobara questioned as she readied her nail gun with one hand and her naginata with the other. Now? Now we wait. Megumi stated, a grin covering his face shortly afterwards. For what? Panda asked, seeming somewhat put off at their inaction as he was excited to begin. For the fishes to pick up the bait. He revealed as he brought up a hand in the form of a curtain hand seal. Bait dash? Oh lord, you're using Itadori as bait. That's hilarious. Moki laughed, not taking any of this event seriously since she viewed it to be a done deal from the start. Conceal within 9 shadows, deeper than night. Shroud all that must remain unseen. As Megumi finished his chants, an obsidian curtain formed around him and his comrades. When it finished forming, the curtain glazed over and shimmered slightly before completely disappearing from sight. What's the point of the curtain? They'd just see us with it here anyways. Nobara found herself puzzled again at her classmates' actions. Normally sure, but this curtain is specialized for concealment and concealment alone. By throwing away most of the other aspects of the curtain, I honed in on the concealment aspect and maximized it. To the point where not even a sorcerer could see or even sense us from outside while we can see them just fine. He explained, feeling proud at his accomplishment but once again remembering the research that made it all possible to begin with. Again, who the hell is Fujiwara Yoshitsune? The notes and research I can find from him is limited, but it's all top-grade stuff, yet with how good he must have been at barrier techniques, there's such little info on him. Damn those Edo-era farmers and their inability to keep records straight for important shit. Neat. Moki simply stated in response as she waited for the Kyoto students to arrive. A short 2 minutes later, she looked up towards the skies and smiled. Moki whistled while pointing to the sky to grab everyone's attention. This move worked as they all looked up towards the sky and saw a small blonde-haired girl sitting on a broom survey the area. Jackpot! One by one, the rest of the Kyoto students made their entrance. Each of them making an effort to make as little sound as possible and to remain undetected. Leading them was Noritoshi Kamo, who held a bow in his hands and was guiding them through the trees towards Yuji's and Todo's spa. They reached close towards where the fight was ongoing and ready to intercept and kill Yuji as soon as he arrived at the clearing. With a small backhanded gesture towards his team, Kamo told them to get into positions before jumping to the top of a tree and readying his bow to strike as soon as his target arrived. However, things were not fated to go according to his plan, as before his very eyes, a dark curtain appeared from seemingly nothing before disintegrating within seconds, revealing Megumi and his comrades in waiting. Kamo, how nice of you to finally join us. I thought you'd be too busy shitting your pants and doping yourself off of your cousin's virgin blood to pass the time. That is what you Kamos like to do in your spare time, no? Keep the bloodline pure and alert. Their appearance caused everyone in the Kyoto school to immediately grimace as they had realized that their plan was found out from the beginning, Kamo most of all. That dig at his clan was, unfortunately for him, all too accurate due to the elder's obsessions with bloodline purity. "It is good to see that you are in high spirits, Zenin-san," Kamo said in response, subtly readying himself to either attack or get out of the way depending on his opponent's next move. Noritoshi is a tall young man who stands taller than most of his peers, save for Aoi Todo, at Kyoto Jujutsu High. He has grey-colored eyes that are normally kept completely shut and black hair. 2 strands of hair in front of Noritoshi's face were wrapped while the rest of his hair flowed behind his head down to his neck. He sported a dark blue Shizoku version of the Jujutsu High uniform with Zori sandals with white socks. "Don't worry, Kamo, I'm well aware of how unfair it is if I or Moki were to fight you guys. It'd be like trying to fight a hydrogen bomb with a coughing baby. So Moki and I both will just stand here and let you all fight. Unless you attack us first, we won't move a muscle," Fushiguro announced, placing both his hands in his pockets and simply standing by as his classmates walked forwards to fight. It seems like his announcement had reinvigorated the Kyoto students' wills as they stood steadfast with full intent to at the very least win this brawl and give Todo enough time to hopefully kill Itadori Yuji. Mechamaru was first to make a move as he brought up his right arm, which transformed in under a second into an even more mechanized form with a hole in the middle of his palm. A light shined from his palm from which formed a blast of heat powered by cursed energy. Ultra Blast! In response to this, Panda jumped in front of the while transforming into his e-gorilla form. Inumaki and Kujisaki didn't need to coordinate together with words as they jumped behind him to avoid the attack. Inumaki took advantage of the smoke screen to sneakily remove his binds and shout out a command to disable the attacker. Nabara on the other hand turned upwards and aimed towards their eye in the sky in Momo with her nail gun to shoot her down. "Loosen screws!" His command had an immediate reaction as the mechanized puppet lurched forwards as its metal plates began to fall apart at the seams, barely being held together with the help of its welded parts. "TCH, damn it all! Smart bastard! That barely took any drain on him, but this puppet is basically already out of the fight," Mechama thought, watching as supernaturally powered nails shot through the air towards his classmate who barely dodged them. "Good thing I thought forwards with some extra plans." Mechamaru mumbled as 2 other puppets of himself appeared besides him, causing the Tokyo students to grimace since their situations were complicated much harder with the presence of 2 more Mechamaras. Good, with more firepower, this should be an easier affair as winning might not be that far off. But how is Zenin-san taking this dash? Noritoshi Kamo's train of thought was halted immediately when he saw something he could not have expected. "Is he are they dash? What?" He whispered under his breath in disbelief. His classmates heard him and turned to follow where he was looking and paused as well. Before him was Megumi and Moki, sitting down leisurely on a large couch that came from seemingly nowhere. Moki was currently laid back with her phone in her hands as she ate a protein bar. She frowned slightly when she did so before turning to Megumi who laid beside her. "Do I really not have any other flavors? You know I don't like nuts that much," she griped while swiping through her phone. "You're the one that wanted my food, Moki, deal with it. Besides, aren't nuts good for you or something? Now let me sleep, will why, eh? This event is boring enough as it is and I need my beauty sleep." Megumi yawned and shifted to get himself more comfortable. "Beauty sleep? You? I don't think any amount of sleep could make you not ugly, but whatever helps you sleep at night," said the former burn victim. "Tell me, how did lava taste like? About as good as the brain damage you got from Satoru felt like. You sure you healed everything away? Kissless virgin. Creepy siscon. One-trick pony. Bronze medal. I really can't be asked to think of another comeback. Truce." Megumi reached into his hari and pulled out a sleeping mask which he used to cover his eyes, before he tried to go to sleep. "Sure." Moki acquiesced as she ate the rest of the protein bar and through the wrapper behind her, she continued scrolling on her phone and occasionally laughed. The fighting between both schools had paused as they all turned to look at the 2 of them as they threw insults at each other with straight faces as if they were 2 siblings relaxing in their living room. The silence in the area was so deafening that if one had a keen sense of hearing, they would hear a distant hysterical laugh. "Ah-ha-ha-ha! This is even better than I had imagined. Why the hell did he have a couch that big in his shadow? But ah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha dash. I don't know if I should be happy that they aren't interested in fighting us that much, or insulted that they think that we're that little of a threat." Miwa mumbled under her breath. It was as if she spoke for all of the Kyoto school students in one sentence. "I'd be happy," Nabara said before she took her chance when they were off guard and immediately shot at Momo's stunned form in the air, landing her bullet with beautiful accuracy which caused her to fall out of the skies. With that, the battle began once again between the students, unknowing of the true threat that was approaching their location. 30 minutes later. This is going nowhere quick, with Todo seemingly befriending him. I don't think it's going to be possible to kill Itadori Yuji at this point. Noritoshi Kamo was starting to get desperate. He jumped backwards and retreated from the battle temporarily to get a clearer view. It wasn't merely just the orders from Principal Gakugunji that he was following. It was also orders and a deal he had made with several elders of his clan that he was stressed with. Their words still echoed in his ears. "If you manage to kill Itadori Yuji under that Zenin's protection, we will support you in becoming the next clan leader once more. We will even settle for merely injuring or humiliating him in any way possible, and if you somehow manage to kill him, we will stop at nothing to make sure you become the leader of the clan." "Aye, very well. But what of my mother? That unruly, disrespectful brat humiliated me and our clan during a meeting with Jujutsu headquarters. If you can finish this mission, we will even find her and bring her to you ourselves. This is a binding vow, do not disappoint us." "I will try my best, honored elders." Kamo shook his head to clear his mind and surveyed his surroundings. He watched as his team was pushed back. Despite their numeral advantage, the Tokyo students were simply better than he could have expected. It wasn't just the Zenins, they were all more than he expected. They fought with an overwhelming sense of teamwork and trust in each other, not even flinching when attacks fired at them as they knew they would be protected by their comrades. He then turned to face the sleeping form of Megumi Zenin, although he admired the man for his achievements despite being younger than him. He currently stood between him and saving his mother, as well as finally achieving his birthright. Kamo reached into his uniform and pulled out 2 large packets of blood. The packets floated above his head before streams of blood erupted from the packets and flowed into a compressed orb ahead of him. "I have to at the very least try. If only once, since he is off guard right now. Maybe I could land a hit and injure him," he reasoned, raising his hands and putting them together as the blood kept flowing through the gaps in his fingers and compressing even further. Convergence, piercing blood. Everyone's attention was immediately grabbed by the sound of something zipping past them at subsonic speeds. The hypersonic projectile sped towards Megumi's seemingly sleeping form with intent to pierce him straight through the head. Even both Todo and Yuji turned to look at the projectile in the middle of their battle-turned-friendly training session, having gotten closer to the others in the battle over time. However, the special-grade sorcerer was not caught unawares as he sensed everything occurring even while asleep. He lifted the eye mask from his face and simply looked on at the oncoming projectile as if daring to hit him. He didn't flinch or falter even as the piercing blood reached 10 centimeters away from his forehead. Just as the lethal projectile was about to land its mark, it was blown apart by a red blur. The blood splattered throughout the air and landed on the faces of both Megumi and Moki. "You're welcome, dumbass," Moki said as she held playful cloud which looked to be modified in her hand while standing before Megumi protectively, not seeming to be bothered or strained in the slightest after parrying a lethal hypersonic projectile. "I knew you had it." He chuckled. He stood up and dusted himself off, taking a moment to wipe away a droplet of blood that had splattered near his mouth. "Well, whatever, you. A dumbass he might be, but he's also the one who will make the world where my sister could have lived freely without fear or worry, so none of you are allowed to kill him," she declared with an ironclad will, standing at the ready to protect him from any other underhanded tricks even though he didn't need it. "Or, that almost made me think you don't hate me, Moki. But thank you either way," Megumi teased as he walked a few steps forwards towards Kamo, drawing an annoyed grunt from the black-haired woman beside him. Anywho Tilda, since I am told I'm a nice person, I'll try to act the part and not immediately tear your head off trying to kill me. Explain yourself, will you? He asked casually, although he hid a sense of viciousness and danger in his voice. In truth, I am desperate. If I am able to injure or cause you to take a loss in any tangible way, I will receive the support of many elders under the promise of a binding vow. I'd finally be able to achieve my greatest goals. Camo confessed, knowing that lies would probably get him nowhere in this situation. I see, I guess that makes sense. I'm still gonna beat his ass for trying to kill me, but I'll let his head stay where it is. Megumi thought, deciding against completely battering him. Or at least, he would have if it wasn't for the other man's following words. It's a shame though, in a different universe, perhaps we could have been good friends. After all, we are the same. We are both beholden to our clans and must bear the responsibility of being heirs, and we have both failed to save someone important to us. Camo said, trying to convey his sympathies to the other man who he viewed to have suffered similar failures as he did. I heard what happened with his sister from the rumors. It must have been awful, he thought. With his words, Noritoshi Camo had faced Megumi with a mirror that reminded him of his self-ascertained failure. The pain hit too close to home. Despite himself, Megumi could actually see the similarities he spoke of and how they had affected his life. And when faced with this unacceptable reality, the special grade sorcerer growled. The air around him became choked with the presence of cursed energy as his crimson eyes began burning in response to his rage. Fushiguro Megumi had completely and utterly rejected it. Worthless maggot! In the viewing room. Oof, he pressed the Tsumiki button. He shouldn't have done that. Satoru called out, knowing that Camo was in for the beating of his life. Yeah, he's cooked. Mai commented. She took a sip of a glass of wine she had by her side. Oh, you say that too? Gojo questioned, somewhat surprised at her choice of vocabulary. HM? Oh yeah, I picked it up a while ago while on a mission. Fun phrase, Tilda. She cryptically said, chuckling to herself while Gojo just shrugged and continued watching. What the hell is a Tsumiki button? Gakugunji asked, completely unfamiliar with the choice in vernacular. You see, Megumi is what people call a siscon. Satoru explained cheerfully, taking almost perverse joy in the man's expression as he figured out what he meant. My poor students. Yutaheim lamented, knowing that the one-sided beatdown was about to begin. Incarnation, Max Elephant. Megumi's eyes narrowed as he brought his hands up in the same pose that Camo did just a minute ago before he slammed them together right after activating his Max Elephant incarnation. Water was formed and immediately compressed within his hands. Convergence. Piercing Aqua. The hypersonic projectile shot forwards with laser accuracy faster than anyone could even blink. It found its mark on the stunned form of Noritoshi Camo and speared him right through his chest. Camo-san! Miwa cried out and moved to run towards him but was stopped by a firm grip on her shoulder. Give it a rest, girl. This won't end well for you. Moki commanded. Although she held a bit of sympathy for her opponent's circumstances, her loyalty towards Megumi held a higher precedent. Noritoshi Camo coughed blood before crumpling to the ground in agony, helpless to do anything as his opponent closed the distance. The crimson-eyed man stared him down. He crouched down beside him before grabbing him by his hair and pulling him upwards. We are not the same, you worthless waste of oxygen. He rejected Camo's declaration entirely. You can't even use your own technique without needing to rely on outside sources. Hell, it's not my ability, but even I can use your best attack better than you can. Do not speak to me of shared failures when you don't even comprehend the difference between us. Megumi whispered into his ear, his rage transformed into a sense of sadistic satisfaction that caused him to grin with malice. Shortly afterwards his eyes gained rings around his irises. But don't worry, despite how much you discuss me and your attempt at my own life, I won't kill you. He channeled his reversed cursed technique and flowed it through his arm and into Camo's body, which mended his injured chest completely. No, I'm going to use you as a way to send a message. A message to those filthy rats you call elders and higher-ups. It's about time they learned a lesson they should have known ages ago. Megumi's shadows bubbled over under his will as he summoned a merged beast to prove his point. Merger, new plus Orokai. This merger served a single purpose: destruction and brute force in its purest form. And so Megumi chose to use the same merger that Sukuna had summoned back in his previous life, taking inspiration in the sheer single-minded brutality that the curse had channeled. He had even overloaded the merger with as much cursed energy as it could handle in order to power it up even further. The merged beast used Nu as its base and is gargantuan, being large enough to perch on top of a skyscraper. Its face is much larger and more humanoid in appearance than Nu's regular form. It also possesses 2 arms, a snake-like tail and the same symbol as the great serpent on its forehead. You all need to know your place in reality, and not try shit like this again. The merger announced its presence with a loud shriek as it flew into the air with a flap of its gargantuan wings. Just as it did so, bolts of lightning flowed down its form and struck down at the ground. The sheer power behind each lightning strike turned everything it touched into ashes. It's a simple concept, isn't it? You're all weak. In this world, none of you have a right to decide what happens in your lives, so don't act as if you do and stay the hell out of my way. With another flap of its wings, the merger brought down Momo Nishimiya straight out of the skies and caused her to crash land in a smoking heap. The Mechamaru puppets tried to get away from the range of the merger, however he was unable to escape the maelstrom as all 3 of the puppets were struck with lightning, overloading all the circuits and turning the metal keeping them together into slag. The only one who remained standing was Kasumi Miwa, whose body started shivering in fear as she looked up towards the lumbering monstrosity that was summoned from the special grade sorcerer's shadow. Yet despite her fear and knowing that she was destined to lose, Miwa reached a shaking hand towards the grip of her katana and struggled against her own survival instinct, which told her to run in an effort to at the very least fall with her honor intact. Sleep. Miwa's body was instantly beset with a deep mandate as her mental faculties slowed sluggishly. Within the span of a few seconds, she began falling down onto the ground but was caught by Moki, who laid her down gently and allowed her to sleep peacefully. Yeah, that was probably for the best, Inumaki. Moki said, glad that at very least one of their opponents weren't going to be burned to a crisp by Megumi's summon. Sheesh, talk about an overreaction, huh? Nabara quipped, trying to lighten the mood after the sudden change of atmosphere. It looks like Fushigobro was set off by something. I hope he's alright. Yuji rubbed his neck passively to loosen up a tight muscle. I couldn't really hear much of what he said over the sound of thunder though. Wait, weren't you and Todo fighting to the death a few seconds before? Panda questioned. It turns out that Itadobro has perfect taste in women, so we obviously became best friends again. Todo declared with an excited tone, happy to be reunited with his best friend after so much time spent apart. In actuality, this is the first time that Aoi Todo and Yuji Itadori had ever met prior to this day. Yet it seems, through pure delusion alone, Aoi Todo had memories of events that had never transpired to begin with. What about your classmates? Who? You'll fit right in. The results of the 30th annual Kyoto Sister School Goodwill event, a completely one-sided crush. Inside the innate domain of Ryman Sukuna, the King of Curses sat on his throne built of the skulls of oxes with his head resting on his right hand. He had a dubious smile on his face as he was listening into the words and happenings around him through his unwieldy vessel. His superior senses and cursed energy control allowed him to pick up on things that not even his vessel had sensed. You're all weak. None of you have a right to decide what happens in your lives, huh? How very intriguing. So there is someone in this era who truly gets it. He laughed out as he continued watching the sorcerer summon a gargantuan beast that crushed his competition without mercy. I must say, at first you had my curiosity. But now? Now you have my attention. Ryman Sukuna paused as he sensed a high presence of cursed energy approaching the battlefield. He then grinned with malicious intent. It seems fate is on my side once more. New challengers approached special grade sorcerer. Keep showing me more, do not disappoint me. Megumi let go of Kamo Noritosh's hair, letting the man crumple onto the ground. He looked towards the west of the forest. He felt two huge signatures of cursed energy approaching the area. About time these bastards get here. I needed something to burn to the ground. Mahito should be infiltrating to grab Choso and his brothers, along with the Sukuna fingers in the possession of the Jujutsu HQ storehouse. Good, I will kill Hanami and Mahito will grab the fingers for Yuji. All is going according to plan. Although that is an unexpected development, but not one out of the range of my expectations. He whispered under his breath. His words were hidden under the deafening sounds of the thunderous maelstrom summoned by his Shikigami. All of you, get ready. We have visitors. He called out before unsummoning his Shikigami since it had served its purpose and he found it to be too inefficient and unwieldy to be worth using for much more than simple intimidation or mindless destruction. Visitors? Yuji questioned, confused as to what he meant since he couldn't sense anything. No, he's right. Something's off. The earth, it's shaking. Moki confirmed. She could feel a subtle quake deep underneath the ground. Right after Moki spoke, the subtle tremors turned into a catastrophic rumble that echoed throughout the entire forest. The ground before them was torn asunder as it split apart. From the shattered earth grew a veritable tidal wave of plant growth that flooded around all of them, trapping everyone with a huge arena made of rock and greenery. It was then that a ginormous curtain fell around the entirety of the forest, trapping them all inside and painting the skies a dark grey. Then the two intruders showed themselves. They were both cursed spirits with a monumental concentration of cursed energy. They walked together in sync and stood far above everyone else atop a spire of plant growth. One of them then walked forwards and started speaking. Apologies in advance, children, but the earth has finally reached its breaking point. It is time for humanity to be wiped out to let it heal. The curse spoke in a language that sounded like utter gibberish, however the meanings of each word was transmitted into the students' minds forcefully. Hanami is finally here, stronger than before to boot if that cursed energy signature is any tell. That is a new one, however, a curse born of humanity's fear of landslides, earthquakes, and the like if his appearance is anything to go off of. Megumi deduced. Reaching into his hari, he went to grab a weapon he hadn't used in a long time. Hanami is a large tan cursed spirit with black lines running across their entire body. Hanami has a helmet-like head that doesn't cover their teeth, branches for where the eyes are supposed to be, and two black lines that zigzag down their face. Underneath the cloth that Hanami wears, Hanami's left arm is entirely black but the fingers are white while their right fingers are black. Hanami wears black baggy pants that are held up with a white sash, and a white cloth that covers their left arm. I don't suppose that the cowards that come to kill children have names, do they? Megumi asked the two curses. In truth, he didn't care in the slightest what the other curse was called since it would die anyways, but it gave the rest of his classmates a chance to strategize. Panda, go get the Kyoto students out of here. I have a feeling that there's gonna be a lot of property damage left and I'd rather they don't die in the crossfire. Moki commanded quietly, catching on to Megumi's plan immediately. The rest of you, attack the curse that Megumi and I don't attack. You don't have to win, just stall them long enough for the two of us to finish up with our own battle. She walked forwards by Megumi's side and reached for Playful Cloud, ready to join him in obliterating the intruders. To this, Moki gained affirmations from everyone present, while Panda looked around to spot the locations of the fallen Kyoto school students. He started by picking up Miwa, before mapping out the route he planned to take to grab the rest of the students without endangering them. I do not see how this matters in the slightest, but considering the fact that you children will die today, I will accommodate. I am Saizum, and this is my elder sister Hanami. Contrary to his supposed sister, Saizum spoke in the same language as they did, but his voice was uncannily chittering in an almost insect-like way. Saizum had a powerful, humanoid form with broad, muscular shoulders and long, sturdy limbs. His skin is rough and textured, resembling hardened scales made of stone. Spikes run along his back and head, giving him a fierce armored appearance which also acted doubly as his clothing. Saizum's face is angular with deep-set, glowing red eyes that radiate intensity. His arms were long enough to reach the ground with claws, sharp and robust enough to tear through flesh and bone as if it was moving in thin air. Panda, run to get the broom girl after I make my move. The rest of you jump the insect-looking one. Moki, with me. Megumi ordered after his finished preparations. In his right hand was the Dark Moon Greatsword which he had finally been able to use after so long. It had been ages since he had gotten an opponent that was actually worthy of him using it after so long. And on his left hand was Koge, however, it had been reforged into the form of a greatsword matching his other. Gotcha. Moki simply said, brandishing her special grade weapon as she did so, revealing a newly honed and sharpened edge. Following the incident with the volcano headache curse, Moki had taken Playful Cloud to a Jujutsu tech blacksmith who had reforged the weapon to include masterfully crafted sharpened spiked edges to both ends of the 3-section staff. Megumi disappeared from his place in a cloud of dust, shortly followed by Moki. They both appeared before Hanami, who was barely able to raise her arms and block both attacks, but was thrown hundreds of meters backwards and away from her brother. Sister! Saizum cried out. He reached a hand to grapple her attackers but was taken off guard when he disappeared from his place and reappeared elsewhere. Megumi and Moki both nodded towards their classmates before they shot forwards ahead to take care of the other curse as quickly as possible, then come back to finish off the other one. Sorry, curse, but your opponent is us, Todo declared with a grin, happy to be able to fight alongside his brother. When he looked around, Saizum found himself to be completely surrounded by 4 different combatants, each ready to attack. This caused the disaster curse to growl and smash at the ground with his arms, sending out a shockwave followed by spikes made of rock shooting out of the ground at his enemies. I am going to crush you puny humans for hurting my sister. Not if we kill you first, Rockhead! Nabara snarked as she, along with her comrades, jumped over and avoided the spikes while shooting back a nail at his head. It's Saizum, you bitch! I don't care.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.